The Board of Adjustment will call a meeting of October 2nd, 2020 to order.
First item, motion on, or action on the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the first item up is Mary Burns. Give your name to Terry, please.
I'm sorry.
Give your name to Terry, please.
Oh, Mary Burns.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this was continued from the last meeting for a full board, it was my understanding. I did watch the video of it, but since I wasn't here, I'm not gonna add too much, so I guess if you guys just wanna jump into it, that's where we're at.
Okay. Dan, you want to start?
Sure, yeah. I'm glad we had a full board and to look it over, and I've done a lot of thinking on it. And just to bring everybody else up on board, you had agreed that you would not build another structure, because she could build the 1,400 and then build a 1,000-foot structure on the property. And this is just, she's gonna do 1,680 and then agreed not to put any other structure on their property. And then, as my understanding is, you guys would sign off so they could not do it, another structure of any size then? So I guess I kind of went more to your way of thinking and thought that that would be better than having two structures on the property.
Yeah.
So that's about all I got to add, because I don't know where we really were. Did you have something to say? I guess you should have asked her.
No,
Okay.
no.
Yes, I wasn't here, so I'm gonna ask some questions, may duplicate,
Sure.
just bear with me. You have a septic system, a space for the septic system, future septic system? This is
So-
a back lot, right?
This all started because our septic system
Yeah.
failed, or it's not up to speed or whatever. It was, you could smell it, it was leaking. So we had a design drawn on our lot where our house is, and it was, it's not gonna be good. So we had been trying to buy this lot behind us for 25 years. A guy wouldn't sell it. Finally decided, so Randy said, call him one more time, see if he'll sell it. So he sold it to us so we could put the septic back there. So we're gonna go under the road. We got permission from the township to go under the road and put the septic system up on that lot behind us. So there's a 1-acre lot behind the house that we live on.
Okay.
So that makes our septic scenario better. And then for future, you know, if that system fails, there's
Yeah.
more room behind it.
Good.
Just a good deal. So since we bought it, we decided to put up a pole shed. We're going, the septic's on this side, the pole shed's all the way over here. So we're leaving there's a building entitlement, so we're leaving the middle open in case anybody ever wanted to put a, you know, cabin or whatever in there. But we'd like to put up a storage shed, and we want the extra 280 square feet. We also had asked to get closer to the road, and I think you guys, the prior people, had said that they were okay with that part of it. It's based on the contour of the lot, it just makes more sense. It's also part of the reason we want it a little bit bigger. We don't need the full 2,400 square feet. It's gonna cost a lot more to do two separate buildings. And based on the contour of the lot, to put another 1,000 square foot building elsewhere, it wouldn't be ideal. This is the flattest part of that lot. So we just want to make this one a little bit bigger and forego the other, you know, square footage that's allowed.
Okay.
720?
So if I'm hearing this right, then if you went with the current proposed plan, then you would agree not to have another building?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then otherwise you could pursue your other route of having two buildings. Let me ask you this, is there any other way you can locate that building without the ordinance, the variance at all? Can you reposition it separate differently or anything like that? What do you want?
Meet the
Separate building?
setbacks.
No, your setback, is there any?
Oh, well, the Charles Webb from the Webb Surveying thought that was the best spot to put it, or not Charles, Bernie looked at it, and he thought, the guy that drew the second septic design thought that would be the best place for it contour-wise on the lot. If you walk up there, it is the flattest spot to put that shed.
And if I may add one thing still, if they sold it, then somebody else could apply for it, but then they'd have to come back to the board of variance again, so.
If the board conditioned it that way, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
That's-
Yeah.
But at that point, you could say no, right?
Well, I'm not a big fan of expanding over the 1,400 square feet. I'll tell you that right off the bat. But, you know, considering what's been suggested, I think it's the better of the plans so far. But that's my thoughts right now, so.
Dan? Or Charlotte?
I stand by what I said at the meeting last month. I'm okay with the roadside setback, but I don't know that we've ever varied the size of an accessory structure in the residential area. This ordinance was reviewed just about 5 years ago, and it was decided that it would stay the same, and that's what we've held to. I don't see why we would afford this applicant something special that we don't afford another applicant. I don't think that it's equal justice under law, or whatever you want to call it. There is no practical difficulty, really. And saying that they can't have a second structure at some point in the future really is a moot. It's an impossible condition to put in, because anybody can come back to have that reconsidered or varied. By law, we cannot tie the hands of either this applicant at some point in the future or a future owner. So that just doesn't fly with me. So I say with what the ordinance says, there is no practical difficulty.
Okay, thank you. Charlotte?
And I'm along with the ordinance also on the 1,400. I mean, it's there for a reason, and it's there in those zonings for a reason. You know, when you start getting some of these larger sheds, and when it's 280 feet and the next one wants 360, you know, when we start a precedence, it does open the door on this R1 zoning. It's different in agricultural. I mean, it's different in different zoning areas. But when you start having these densities of houses and you start putting up these large sheds, and I agree with Charlotte, there really is no practical difficulty here to do that. And that's one thing we have to look at. And, you know, just like you brought up, if somebody comes in and asks for another shed, we can say no. Well, we're kind of in the same situation here. We can say no to going over 1,400 square feet. So I guess as far as being to the road variance, I mean, I don't have an issue with that at all, because we've done that before. We've allowed sheds to be, you know, within those ranges to the road, and the township approves. But to go over, I guess I'm challenged with that, to be very honest.
Yeah.
What is the thought with having the buildings have to be separate? But why is that rule in place?
Barry, can you?
Generally, the larger the structure, the more, this is my understanding, this has been in place long before I got here, but kind of my understanding is the larger the structure, the more types of uses that can go in them, and the more attractive they are for uses that aren't allowed in a residential area. You know, commercial storage, businesses, and those types of things. I believe that's the basic premise of it, and it's to prevent larger profile buildings from being in residential areas. So there's kind of the way it's been explained to me, those are kind of the two primary reasons for it.
Have you thought at all about, because it seems like 1,400 is a little restrictive. Have you thought about doing like, okay, one or the other? You can have 1,900 square feet just making the restriction a little bit bigger. You can either have a 1,400 and a 1,000, or you can have a 1,900 square foot, and just, you know, give people the choice maybe of making, not a big, huge structure that might be used for commercial purposes, but like in my situation where I just want that lean-to for a little bit of extra storage, it would give people an option to to still be able to do something a little bit bigger and accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish versus a commercial use or something like that.
As the board had mentioned, the commercial, or the accessory structure size and limitations were looked at a few years ago, and it was decided at that time not to change this particular piece. The R2 zoning district used to have a 2,000 square foot max as well. They removed that. There is now no restriction on a single accessory structure size in the R2 district. That is the only thing they decided to change. So it's one of those things that, you know, it's up to the planning commission and the county board how they want to proceed with it, and that's, when they looked at it a few years ago, that's what they had decided to do. They didn't decide to roll this into it. It was brought up, but it was something they decided not to change at that time.
Well, you would end up with, if you allowed people to go a little bit bigger, one or the other, one building a little bit bigger, whatever number you came up with, and then you don't get the other 1,000, or you can do it in 2 separate buildings, that gives you less construction or less structures on properties if you did it that way. Because I'm guessing more people would choose a little bit bigger building than 2 separate buildings, because it costs a lot of money to build a separate building.
Well, you know, the thing is we don't have a limitation on number. I mean, I've seen 6 or 8 10 by 12 sheds people put out there because they don't want to get a building permit to build one that's that size. You know, we've seen that too, where there isn't a limitation on the number, as long as they meet the setbacks and you don't exceed certain size requirements, it's all can be done. So we've seen a number of different things. I mean, what we've experienced is run the gamut of just about anything you can imagine. That's what we've seen. So, and you know, this type of discussion, that would be for an ordinance amendment, which, you know, if this board wanted to initiate it, you could, but it's going to be up to the zoning administrator, the planning commission, and the county board whether or not they want to make any changes.
Okay, Dan, you have?
Yeah, I had just one quick question for Barry. If she built 1,400 square foot, what's the setback for 1,000 square foot?
Same. Setbacks are all the same.
But I mean, how close can she build next to the existing building if it's on her own
That gets
property?
into building code as far as we're concerned, if it's, you know, as long as it's not physically attached to it and connected to it.
That's why
I mean, quite honestly, by code, you could probably abut it right against it, you just not attach it. It's not a seamless piece of concrete, it's, you know,
Yeah.
it's not a shared wall, it's a abutting walls, I mean,
Well, that is kind of what we want to do, is we want to build this 14,
with the lean-to.
1,400 square feet, 28 by 50. And the lean-to would be on the outside of that. There would be a service store on the
There's one common
1,400. And then the lean-to would just be added to it. It would be attached though. I mean, it would be
Yeah, that's the
butting
point
up
I'm
to
trying
it.
to
So it'd
make
be
is,
3 walls added to the outside of that one structure.
are we just adding more bigger building, but all that's sitting for the setbacks? But that's why I kind of changed my mind and started thinking, well, if she's willing to call it just this size, are we stopping from a building just being built right next to it? I don't know if that makes sense, you know what I mean? To restrict it now and have her build another little 280 square foot building button right up to it, just one wall difference is the only thing it makes for us.
And to be honest with you, I was on that same line.
Yeah.
But then it still comes down to, you know, no matter if you change, there's always gonna be somebody coming
Yeah.
for a little more. And where do we, without a hardship here?
Yeah.
Without a true hardship or a true, real need. I mean, this is, they've purchased a back lot for the sewer, they're taking care of that problem, and now they want a storage shed. You know, so I'm getting to that point, I mean, if you could give me a hardship, or you could, you know, that there's really a strong reason to have it, you know. But with the lean-to, you know, you're looking at the design of the shed, I'm looking at it, okay, the size of the shed with the lean-to like that, it's totally enclosed. You know, it's a little spot to run a little business out of, or it's a spot where you could do crafts out of and be selling things out of. You know, there's an ordinance of 1,400 feet. You can design your building however you want to design it. You know, where's the hardship here? They didn't have the shed before, now they want to add a shed for storage, for whatever, and that's fine. But let's try to stay within the ordinance. On this situation, is where I'm coming from.
Does the hardship have to be a bigger building, or does it have to be? Well, I think the hardship is that it would cost more money to build a separate building, because you're okay with the extra square footage, it just has to be in a separate building. And then also, the contour of the lot, it would be not ideal to have to put it somewhere else on. If you look at that lot, it's a big hill, and it's flat over here, and it's flat over here. We chose the flat part over here for the septic.
Is the lean-to the one that's getting closer to the property line?
No.
It is? No.
Well, we could put it in, we could attach
But
it.
as drawn, are you closer, are you asking for a
Oh, no, I
variance?
think it's on the other side.
So then-
We would put it on the
Another
other
building.
side. Yeah, it's not gonna make it
You
closer.
have to get
to
a
the road.
variance then. on
It
the
would go
next
into
building,
the lot.
Right? You can build a 300 or 400 square foot just not attached
Actually, it might.
without a
But
variance.
what is separation then? I mean, how far, so we'd have the structure,
Common
like I
door.
said, we'd have the 1,400 square feet. It'd be 3 walls that would butt up against the outside of that building. Is that not kosher? Or is that considered a separate building?
Separate building, I guess.
I mean, it would be a separate slab that would be added. It'd be 3 walls that would be butted up. I'm sure they'd have to be screwed in, but,
At the location proposed, if it was butted up against the building, it would still require a road setback variance from one side at about 56 feet. So actually, I'll walk up and show
I mean, I'm calling it the same building, but maybe it is a separate building.
This corner is 56 feet.
So she would need a variance even for another building there?
Unless you moved it.
Yeah.
And there again, then you're getting other side. It's close, but yeah, I could probably do it.
Barry, I can't read these numbers from the top of the hill to say the road. How many feet of fall is there?
That top little pimple is 1094. If you go to where the township road kind of bends there, to the northwest, or to the upper left, not all the way, but where it makes its first L, that elevation is about 1080, so that's about 14 feet over the span of 95.
14 feet.
What
that's
area are
pretty
you
great.
talking about?
Well,
Yeah,
I'm just trying to, looking at it, you can tell that there's a lot of fall.
15%, 15 to 20% slope.
Significant.
So it's significant, so then if you want to look at the difficulty there is a difficulty to, you can put another 1,000-foot shed in there. And if we can put a restriction on no other sheds or no other onto it without coming back and asking, we can say no, obviously. But the way the lot is and where they're placing that building for another 280 square feet, you could look at the hardship is the type of the property with the slope, the hill. To be able to place another 1,000-foot shed, any place where they put this one, looking at the map and the contours, it is on the flattest spot. Any other place without building it a foot apart, which is silly,
Yeah, it is.
it is.
That's what
And the one thing I'll mention, I know it was brought up, somebody wants to build a guest cabin there, in this case, they can't. Doesn't matter who owns it, they can't build a guest house type, it has to be a full dwelling, meet the full dwelling standards, because it's its own separate lot, even from their lot, because of the platted road in between, it's its own separate buildable lot with its own standards. And so guest houses aren't permitted on lots without a primary residence. Additionally, guest houses would be they're considered an accessory structure, so that would take that out as well.
I'm probably calling it the wrong thing.
It'd be a cabin.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not you homestead, or, use it as a separate home, or just have people stay in there, as long as it's 800
Look,
square
we
feet,
don't-
meets a minimum
you know-
single-family dwelling, we don't care if you're using it as a
Yeah.
extra sleeping quarters.
Right.
What's built just has to meet our house standards.
No, I get that. And it's not our intention to do that, because we are, my husband's gonna retire in however many years, and it's not in our future to build another structure, but I'm just, whoever owns it beyond us.
Can that property be sold now for sewer or septic systems on there? Do they have to cut it off yet, or?
No, they can just assign themselves an easement when they sell it.
We would like to attach the properties, but we can't because there's
Because
a
of the
road
road.
in between it.
And then there's more cabins further down, so you can't vacate that section of road because it cuts off other people's ability to access their home with public road frontage without crossing private property, so.
So, I, if I may, I'd like to make a motion to approve the 1680 due to the hardship of the pitch, and then plus I know it's just, we're squabbling over it. I think she'd build another building right next to it, and it's just not sensible to me. So I'll make a motion to approve. And for discussion there,
Okay, motion's been made.
Can you spell out the motion, I guess, with any conditions? I mean,
yes, I was waiting for a second, but you want me to read it off, and I will. For the variance to allow the construction of an oversized accessory building of 1680 square foot, that will be 40.2 feet from the public road and the closest point, according to section 155.003B1, 155.026, 155.049, and B and F3. 155, Chapter 155, Title 15, Land and Use Zoning, Wright County Code of Ordinance, with the, she would not be allowed to put any other structures on the property,
Accessory structure.
accessory structures on the property, and I think that was all we were asking without a variance.
Yeah.
There's a motion.
Okay,
I'll second it.
okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Dan Vick, aye.
Hold on,
Wait, discussion?
no discussion?
Oh,
Okay,
yep.
go ahead.
Okay, I want to make sure no little sheds, no 40 square foot sheds can go on the property, nothing.
No
No additional
structures.
accessory structures, no gazebo, no nothing.
Correct, that's, no other accessory structures and anything other than a primary is considered accessory, so.
Okay. With that,
Okay, been moved and seconded.
Paul? Aye.
John? Aye.
Charlotte?
No,
Dan Mall, aye.
Pretty much.
Okay, thank you very much.
yeah,
So can I go apply for the permit?
You need 2 sets of the building plans?
I had them with last time. Okay, fair enough.
Then you can. Best thing to do is call the main office and schedule an appointment to bring it in, that way they know you're coming.
Okay. Are you Barry?
Yes.
Oh, it's nice to meet you. I've talked to you on the phone a few times. So just to be clear, where that lean-to is on that drawing, that's okay?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a nice
Mr. Chairman,
day.
I'll jump right into the next item.
All right,
The Bulky Properties LLC matter has been an ongoing item that's been continued a number of times. Speaking with the representative for the property owner, they're still working through stuff with the township and trying to get a handle on what all it's gonna take to build it to what the township is requesting. And so instead of just continuing this and continuing this and continuing this, I advised the representative that, you know what, let's dismiss this. When you get everything in order, come back in. We won't charge you a full fee. We'll charge a re-notification fee, and we'll get this thing back on the agenda once you're ready to proceed. Because it doesn't, from what it sounds like, it's not gonna be a super quick resolution to what's kinda going on with the township and between the township and the property owner. The representative agreed, talked with the owner signed the dismissal form, so I have a motion that is in the staff report. They have signed their request to dismiss the matter, and they will reapply at a time when they are more ready to proceed. So we just need a motion on the dismissal.
I'll make a motion to dismiss without prejudice.
Seconded.
moved and seconded. All in favor?
Dan Vick, aye.
Paul? Sorry. Paul, aye.
John, aye.
Dan Mall, aye.
Charlotte, aye.
There we go. Walczewski, Harry.
Charlotte's gonna start coming back in, so we don't have to roll.
I wanted to get that one up. This is the Walczewski matter. Please give your name and to Terry, please.
Dale Walczewski.
I'm Jennifer Bernig.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this request is for a 40 by 60 accessory structure to be 160 feet from the north fork of the Crow River. The Crow River is what we call a transitional river, so it carries with it a 200-foot setback. The property is also in the long-range land use plan as resource lands, which was noted previously, and is zoned general agriculture. So the size of the structure, even though there's another structure on the property, still is within all the size requirements, unlike the last one we kind of looked at. But it's strictly about that river setback. So I do have the proposed site plan and the floor plan in relative height. I don't have a full elevation drawings, but it does have the cross-section showing sidewall height. It'll be within our sidewall height requirements. So other than that, I don't have anything more for the board. So do you have anything more you would like to add?
No?
All right, Paul?
Just a second. Is there anyone on the WebEx call on the Walczewski matter? No. Okay, it looks like we're good, so.
I do have some concerns with the proposal. It is in the Resource Land District area, which is something, these are state guidelines that we need to follow as closely as possible. While we can deviate from them a little bit, it's still a little red flag for me. You know, the size that you're asking for and the height, I think is really kind of pushing it. I know as the proposal sits now, I can't go along with it. I'd like to see it relocated elsewhere or not the full 40 feet. So those are my thoughts.
Okay. Charlotte?
I'm kind of in agreement there. I think that because this is resource land and also river, I'd like to see it outside of the setback. So it looks to me as though the building could be moved to a location that's compliant, and perhaps it needs to be downsized, but it looks as though it could be shifted north to get out of the setback. And also, it looks to me that there's already a 1,000 square foot detached garage on the property, so it's not as though there isn't a lot of accessory structure already there.
Okay. Dan?
Yeah, I've got some of the same concerns, with looking at it and asking for the variances, then you're gonna start getting into some of the water runoff. How are you gonna handle any drainage coming off of that shed going towards the river? You know, if you could get it moved back and get it out of it, so we don't have to worry about a variance, then that changes that picture too. But otherwise, I know you're within that setback area. How are you gonna handle that water coming off of that shed within that setback area? And also, looking at the map down by the river already, is there a trailer house there, or what is that with?
That was the previous owners. I don't know what they had there.
I think it was just like a cattle trailer or something.
Okay. That's not
there.
That's not
Yeah,
there anymore,
right.
so that,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I guess what is your thoughts on moving it back, or why do you want it placed there? I guess we really haven't heard that from you as to, the reasons or what the necessary need is for there.
Well, I think the main thing is if we get it where it's not part of the setback, then we're looking at only about 12.5 feet away from that back corner of our garage. And just for functionality purposes, being able to get into the shop and out of the shop, seems to be a little challenging. It just feels close. And obviously I can't totally picture it, but
It just
basically,
seems like it'll just get congested.
yeah.
Would there be an ability to move it back, say 20 feet, if it's 12 feet, and if you would back it off and we wouldn't be 40 feet? I mean, is there any way that we can back it up and it still works for you and be very minimal impact? I mean, something like that would be more favorable for me. I mean, even if we could get 20 to 30 feet back where, you know, you're only 10 feet type situation.
So you're saying, when you said the 30 feet,
Well, right now, looks like you're 40 feet.
40 feet,
According to
yeah.
what our maps and what we've got, is you're about 40 feet inside of that impact zone.
so just
If you
moving
got
it 10 feet.
Totally compliant, you're saying it's 12 feet, and then it gets, I mean, I can see the hardship.
Yeah.
You're right next to your other buildings. I mean, it's
Yeah.
about like we're just talking building right on to that building. But if we could get it backed up, so say you're only 10 feet of variance or 15 feet of variance, it's a lot easier to do than 40 feet into the impact zone.
From the back corner of that existing garage to the river is about 306 feet. So with the 200-foot setback, there's 106 feet. They built right at the 200. That'd leave about 40 feet if it was moved in
Yeah.
place right at the 200.
I mean, even if you could put it right on the 200, you got some 40 feet there. My goal is to try to keep us as compliant as we can, but also, you know,
Workable.
workable and,
So, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I understand it. So this is the 200 feet line, is that what I
You're
understand?
looking at that blue line?
Yep,
The blue line is the 200 feet.
okay.
I gotta get that in here too. I can measure it right off of there.
And you're saying you want only like 10 or 15, 20 feet to go?
even if you could go 40 feet, with Barry measuring it, and you could put it right on the blue line.
Right where we start with.
Like the front of the shed or the back of the shed?
The back of the shed, because the back of the, or the side of the shed, because that's what's pushing into the river setback.
Would we be fine with asking 30 feet instead of 40?
It's, we have to consider the state, you know, and then also, you know, there is no hardship in this case. So it's really difficult for us to grant what you're asking, you know. But if you can, like Dan was suggesting, pull that back, that would help us a lot. Because like we had before, there are other people who are asking the same thing, and we need to be able to be consistent and follow state guidelines, and yet at the same time, try to work with you in getting what you want, you know.
So, can I go up there?
Yeah.
Just want to make sure. So let's say if we do 20 feet, then we just move it 20 feet back this way?
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
And if you could do 40, it would be even easier.
Yeah,
That would make it
but
really,
then we'd be right back to where we started and we wouldn't need a variance, right?
Just slightly downsize that building a little bit to give you that. I mean, that would go a long ways too, considering it, if you could.
I'd rather just stick with the 20 feet and keep my building size.
We're hoping to get, camper and, it's
I-
just storage.
I guess I don't understand what the height has to deal if there's no other residents around there not blocking their views.
We're in Wright County, so we have to try to keep it, precedence is the same for everybody, whether it's on the Mississippi River, whether it's on the Crow River, whether it's on a lake. I mean,
Well,
the state has set up guidelines for us with setbacks, and it's our jobs up here
to follow.
to try to follow them as close as we can. And if there's times where there's hardships, where, I mean, there's nothing that people can do, it's not brought upon by them, it's just lots of different reasons. To go into any specific one is not fair to anybody. And we're here kind of asked to make sure that we follow those things along with you asking for variances.
and part of this is, it's not necessarily about the other residents seeing it or anything like that. It's the Crow River, this is part of a designated canoe route. So now anyone that's traveling the river for recreational purposes, now when they go around that corner, will see a building. A building that's closer to the river than it's supposed to be. And as a recreational canoe river, that's something that needs to be taken into account as well. So it's about that view from the river, not necessarily from other residences around the property.
Okay.
So I guess I would like to, even if you could build it on the line, move it back and get it built on the line, you know, so we don't have to give a variance. I mean, in my mind, that would be the most optimum thing for you to do, but I understand you want storage and be able to get vehicles in there too.
Dan?
Well, Dan answered a lot of, or asked a lot of the questions that I was thinking of. What is the setback on to the yellow line right now, and what's required? Are they just right on that?
That is the setback line as drawn, actually. The yellow
Okay.
is the setback.
So their property actually goes a little further? I'd rather
Yep.
have them go that way a little bit, so you stay at 12.5 off your house and pull away from the river. I'd give a variance over on that yellow line before I would like to give a variance on the river line. I don't know how much property there goes back though. Cause she made a comment of the 12.5 feet. So I would give her, you know, that way, move it up away from the river. If possible, I don't, you know what I'm saying?
No, not exactly. You mean like towards the yellow line?
Yeah, so you'd get that, she made a comment of 12.5 feet if you moved it up this way,
It's 12 and
which would be west, right? Huh?
actually, it's from corner of that garage to, I mean, if they built right at the 200 feet, there's more than 12 and a half. There's gonna be, like I say, in the neighborhood of 40 feet.
Okay, I'm going by that picture you got on there.
Okay, from 12 and a half
You
from
got
which
12.5
one?
here, but if she
Oh,
just
that
moved
one,
it up to
yeah.
there and back a little bit, you'd have plenty of room to get through there.
Yeah, and
Stay
that-
off of that.
And that's not right at the setback either. That one's even more than, or farther than to the 200 feet.
Okay. I think there's plenty of room for you to get it on that property without going towards the river, so. And, so I would be following the line of the rest of the guys. It's tough to do that, cause then anybody else wants to go on the river. Oh yeah, you did it here, you know, we hear that all the time. So we gotta stay consistent.
Yeah, and just for the boards, on this particular one, that closest box was just an example.
Yeah,
That can slide, you know, a number of feet riverward and still be fully compliant. That wasn't necessarily, well, that's where it has to be.
yeah.
You got 30, it can move forward another 35 feet. So the 35 and the 12 and a half, I
Yeah.
mean, like I say, it's right around 40 feet you could have in between those buildings.
So right on the line, I think you could make it.
So then when we're building that, how do we know right where that line is? So we don't,
Surveyor would give you that setbacks after they show them the setbacks. When you survey it out, you'd know right where it was.
You're saying like the back of that shed on that blue line, is that what you're saying?
On the yellow and the blue line are close to that, because that's a setback, the yellow line. So you
So
can
that's
slide
pretty much-
down and back and stay away from your house a little bit more.
That's pretty much right where we started, right?
Yeah, right in that corner.
I believe that yellow line's,
Is the
I don't know if I
setback.
can go any further, that's a property line in there.
That is the property line? Or is
Yellow,
that just,
the yellow line on that is the setback line, not the property
yeah,
line.
so you can go all the way to that yellow line.
Would it,
Well, I thought we had to be like 10, 15
20
feet off
feet.
of that.
That already is.
the line is showing it, would it help you if you could go back and repropose it? Think about what you've heard today and stake it out and play around there in your yard how you want it?
well, we've
Come back
kind
with
of
a different-
taken
Yeah,
the roller and, you know, tried to do the visual, but, you know, it's hard when,
And so here's the thing, I wouldn't require the surveyor to go out and survey this when they applied for permits. What I would say is, you would show me on a site plan it meeting the 200 feet. So take a copy of the aerial, redraw it where it meets it, and then if you want to know where that 200 feet is, you run a line, a tape, 106 feet from the corner, or 107 feet from the corner of that garage, towards the closest portion of the river, there's your 200 feet. So if you build it the closest corner to the river right there, and then run it back 60 feet, you're good. You would have, we have enough known stuff on this site to where we could do this without needing it getting surveyed.
Sure.
And build at the 200 feet, even if they, you know, if the board granted a 10-foot variance, we could add another 10 feet to that, so now it's 115 feet from that corner. And so you can measure out, put a stake, follow the river line a little bit, shift everything south and a little bit forward. I mean, on a site, I've had to do this myself on a number of occasions, it can be done pretty simply.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't need a survey for it.
Okay.
So we can find that 200 feet pretty easily. And then, like I say, I think, you know, if, based off of this one, ship this whole thing right up to that blue line.
Yeah.
We're good with that. I mean, from my standpoint, if you would've came to me with that right away, I wouldn't even have had you come here. You know, and that's,
I guess that's where we started with, right?
No, we started.
no, you
right
started with it
Yeah,
inside
Yeah.
that blue
Yeah.
line, so that's why we're here. And
Yeah.
there again, like I've told you, I can't make the decision, it's
right.
these guys
Yep.
that have to, so.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, I agree with Barry.
Yeah, I
I think it
guess
can be done in there.
We would appreciate anything, you know, that you can give us, just so we don't feel so on top of our house and our garage. It would be appreciated.
I think when I started with your contractor, actually, he wanted it, you were looking at it over by
We were
where the
looking at-
camper
yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Well, we were looking at it, yeah, over in this area, because it seemed like more land, you know, it seemed like it would make more
Flattest spot on the
sense,
lot,
but
you know,
yeah,
is the way it looks here, it's
Yeah.
pretty much the flattest spot, but.
yeah.
I guess being you know, you're here, what I would suggest is like Paul is saying, is go and take some of the information Barry's given you, go do some measuring and see if you can make it, you know, with inside the blue line. And if you really don't feel you can and you need a 10-foot variance, then we'll continue it, come back next month and say, you know, we've laid this all out, all of our travels, all of our, you know, we really feel we need a 10-foot variance. You know, I think
That makes sense. Good way to
it
go.
would be easier, but if you can make it fit inside that blue line, we'll just dismiss it.
Yeah, and what I would do is I'd send you a form, you sign the form, send it back to me, come in that day, you could drop off the form and your building plans to build it the same day, and we'll just dismiss it at the next one, you wouldn't have to come. We just dismiss it for you.
So if you know, like Barry says, if you can make it all fit within that, you don't need a variance, you can get going right away, correct?
But yeah, but if they can continue it, so at least you're not, it gives you that option to come back to them without having to reapply, pay another fee and everything else, so they would continue it for a month. You would be scheduled to come back in November. If you can make everything work, you don't need it, you just want to start the construction, sign the dismissal, bring in your plans, and we'll get that review process underway. If you want to do that, we can do that.
That work? Are you okay with that?
Sure.
I'll make a motion to continue this item until the November meeting of.
Sixth, is it the 6th, Terry?
Yes.
Yes.
I'll second that motion.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion? All in favor?
Dan, Dick? Did you have something to say?
Oh, no.
Aye.
Paul, aye.
Hi, Charlotte.
John, aye.
Dan Mal, aye.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, so just let me know.
Can I ask you a question before we? Sure. So, I just want to make sure, so you said to go from the back of the garage and go how many feet?
I measured it off at about 106. 106, 107.
You
Okay.
want me to write that on my paper? 106
Yeah,
feet over back?
that'd be great.
Here, I'll-
Yeah, and it's to scale, and so at this one, at 50 feet equals an inch. So it's, as you can see, I get 100, and then plus about, yeah, I would give it 6 feet, 106.
160,
Go
okay.
Because there's a little bit of
Wright
overhang, and so
County's,
it's like, yeah,
website
plus or minus,
and
I
their
mean, this stuff
beacon
isn't
map system,
pinpoint
they have
precision,
a nice
as
little
long as
ruler
a
that you
good
can
faith
use,
effort's
and also
made.
Google
Like,
Earth
how that line
has a
goes right
ruler
there.
tool.
I
So
mean,
you can take that.
Well, then what
and
you do is
stretch
you just
that
try
ruler
to,
out, and
just
it'll
look
give
at
you
this
a
and see
nice
kind of
little
how it
map.
comes across,
Okay,
and then you
Might
could,
help you.
we could
All right.
measure
Thanks.
Perfect drawing
You know.
and what we're,
to the corner of the property too, so it's about 135 feet.
took this right and moved it over to the line.
Okay, This
just
way,
so I,
my root, just 1 second, Mr. Chairman.
beware. My legs got, something bit them the last 2 times I was here when I left.
Oh, right.
My legs got all kinds of red dots right up top, right above my socks up to my knees.
Strange.
All right, give your names to Terry, please.
I'm Gerald Larson.
Bernie Miller.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the property is on Sullivan Lake. It's 2 lots that total 25,650 square feet. That is to replace an existing dwelling that is within the bluff with a new 1,300 square foot structure that has that's a 1,330 square foot basement or main level with a 171 square foot covered porch and a 592 square foot attached garage on the main level. That would be over a 1,330 square foot walkout basement with 1,655 square feet of living space on an upper level. So this would be a 2-story over a walkout. The structure is proposed within the bluff, 56.8 feet from the traveled road center line. It'd be 65 feet from the platted center line and will be serviced by a type 4 septic system. I do have aerials with topography as well as survey, septic site plan showing where the structure is located. In this case, the bluff kind of stops. Mr. Miller and I did, we spent a lot of time in the last, over this summer looking at bluffs and bluff definitions and how things are done. And this is kind of what we came up with for a bluff on this lot. This lot. The reason it stops where it stops is because of the slopes they lengthen out as you go south on the lot, and it gets to a point where it's less than 18% slope over a span of 50 feet. That's where we determined where the end of that bluff was. Although there is some steeper slope, it's so far down the ridge that it's getting down lower to the lake, so it's no longer considered a bluff. And so in this case, the porch is the portion that's over the bluff. A good share of the structure as a whole is going to be what's considered within the bluff setback. And so it's within the bluff setback, but also a portion of it is over the bluff, and that would be that porch. We do have the elevation drawings for the proposed structure, all 4 sides, as well as the 3 levels of the floor plan. And a cross-section on the lower right there, with pictures of the existing structure and kind of that lower one. These were all taken by the assessor, so that lower one is a picture kind of looking up at what the slope kind of looks like. That's why I included that one in there. So, and that's generally where the house location is going to be, is back up behind where those existing structures are. We did receive approval from the township. And we did have one neighbor, I'm not sure of the name, Klein, have no issues with the variance.
Okay, I think with all of that said, and in talking to one another here, Charlotte, we're in the situation where we'd like to take a look at this with a site review.
Well, I think the applicant should be able to run through their information, state their case, and then let's see where the board wants to go from there. I would recommend a site visit to this one as well, but we should give the applicants the ability or the chance to state their case, and once they're done, see if there's anyone else on the call that wants to do the same.
Okay, but just to let you know our views at this point.
Yep.
Okay. All right, sir.
We purchased this lot from the county in a conservatorship years ago. And before we purchased it, I spoke with Barry about, what our options were. And he said, well, you can replace what's there, or we can go for a variance if we want to do something bigger. So over the years, we've cleaned up the place. It was a disaster. And we've determined that we have 4 children now. We've had 4 kids, and 24 by 24 probably won't really work for our needs. So we've worked with Barry and with Bernie and with Charles Webb to try and come up with the best scenario to stay, minimize our impact on the structure. And if you look at what we've kind of got drawn out here, we sit back in the, here's all our setbacks, and we've done our best to make this building fit fit in there without, you know, encroaching anything. We've shrunk the house. We started out with a bigger footprint, and we determined that wasn't gonna work. We shrunk this down, and we've done our best to make this work. And then we've worked with Bernie here as well, and he's more on the technical end of it with,
Yeah, I can explain a few things. So, I mean, this started in 2015 for us, when we started first looking at it, and I said, let's go look and see if we can get a septic, and then, all right, we found a spot, we think we can do the septic, which is kind of on the north side. It's about the only spot really they have that, it's kind of a sweet spot for soils right in that area. You can see we had done quite a few borings. You know, we started looking then at different options, and they had a house plan that had a 40 by 63 house. That's basically the same as the one that, basically 2-story, 40 by 63 house. And his wife wanted to start it down at the same setback as the old house. Like, you know, whatever that is, you know, 35 feet from the lake or whatever. So we're like, you know, I said, no, I don't. And she's like, well, then maybe we move back to the back, which was 65, the setback's 100. I said, no, I don't, you know, I said, I think we're gonna have to try to avoid, you know, as much as possible. At that point, there was, we had some discussion with Barry over this and the surveyor, and unfortunately, how, since 2015, what's happened with bluffs, and primarily this year, I think me and Barry can agree that we've came to a pretty good agreement on, with some additional information that came out from the DNR on how that clarifies some stuff. So I found some stuff online that shows how they actually determine some of these gray things that we were always confused about, you know, like everyone would have a different interpretation. So even the survey doesn't call bluff. We didn't think we had a bluff at all to start with. So we worked the house design was designed, went with Casey Holmes, Brandon. You know, our goal was to design a house that did not need variances. I mean, that we went from all the way down to the lake to designing a house with no variances. We were expecting to not have one variance, you know, and then it came up that, you know, okay, now it's bluff. So then we go through this exercise to try to figure out, and Barry had a different line, you know, and the way he did it, and I, you know, had to demonstrate the way we did it. We kind of agreed without, you know, we pulled everything off the plan and only had the elevations, so nothing affected, you know, our judgment. It was purely just based on the math, right? And this is the line we agreed to. The crazy thing is,
We went through, what, about 4 or 5 renditions of that line?
yeah, no, it's all, and to be honest with you, you know, if this contours ran parallel to the lake shore and didn't go like this, and I don't know that, I kind of feel like this bluff may not even be here, or it would not even meet it. I mean, it would,
yeah.
I mean, the whole thing, if you looked at it, if you look at this map, if you could put it up there, Barry, let me just show you one thing. That doesn't, and it just shows this definition. Yeah,
Right there.
yeah, okay. So these contours here, you know, you can see how far apart they are. This is bluff. Okay, these down here, deeper, closer together, not bluff.
It's and Bernie and I've talked with, you know, 3 other surveyors and other people, and the bluff definitions that we have to work with are very difficult to work with. There's so much vagueness in it, and at the same time, there's very few bluffs that are all the same, and so, you know, when you're applying this stuff from one to the other, some things surprise you. You're like, there's no way that's bluff, and it ends up being bluff, and others, it's like, that's got to be bluff, and you look, well, it's not. I mean, it's you know, having been on hundreds of sites around the county, you know, the bluff definitions are difficult, but at the same time, you know, having worked with it for 20 years, I can't think of a different way to define it either. I can't think of a way to propose to the DNR to change it, because it's, what do you do? So we.
Makes
this-
sense, but it doesn't make sense at the same
It's-
time.
And it's so the bottom line is, there's no question, it's a steep slope. How, if you look at what's there now, everything that was down below, the one thing that's not shown on that plan that's on the survey is there was another
A garage.
A garage foundation right
Yeah.
down there, right in the bluff. I mean,
We've removed that.
so it's, it's basically, he could go down to where his old place is, and Barry said that the old cabin was in the bluff, and I don't know that you can even say it's in the bluff, because I don't think the old cabin's actually, that part actually doesn't need bluff.
Right.
So it's like he can, so he either rebuilds kind of where he's at, or tries to do something more and at least meet lake setbacks. And I think there's a lot of things a person, the site has been basically obliterated. And if it was never touched, there's a lot of this that probably won't even count as bluff, to be honest, because the way they filled and moved dirt around and changed it. So I think if a person could come up with a way to, and it actually talks about that in the DNR when you look on their website, if there's a way that we could come up with a very good plan to shorten long-term, mitigate any of these impacts that may be associated with this, I think this would be a great time to do it, and I think it can be done. And the way this is designed, this house is gonna have about 2 feet of drop and about 30 feet out the walkout, so it's gonna be flat right there. It has a big flat area right at that spot to slow down the water, to do a rain garden, to do, to eliminate any kind of erosion control, so it's a tough one. Also, the other thing to think about that you'll maybe see in a site visit is that gray line that kind of looks like a backwards S. That's an existing retaining wall that's there. And it's fairly nicely done, so we're kind of trying to work around that. A person, again, we were trying to avoid all variances. If we had to, we could probably pull a little bit closer to the road, but it doesn't really, or we could pull away from the side yard and just be out of the bluff. But if you go out there and look at where this is in the best spot on the property to put it. Way better than rebuilding something down below 30 feet from the lake.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, is there anyone on the WebEx call that has any comments?
Okay. Dan?
You've explained it very well. I would like to go out and see it, but in some of the explanation of the work you've gone through to try to make this fit, I guess I personally, with some of the bluff and some of the things we have to deal with the bluffs and the different things, I'd like to go see it. But as it's drawn out in the way you've explained it and looking at the contours and stuff, and where the existing buildings are so close to the lake, pulling it back in what you're proposing, before I say which way I'm gonna go or not go, or I would really like to see it, but you've done a lot of work at it, and I commend you for that, to try to get it so you don't need a variance. But when you get into the definitions, I understand what you're saying, so I guess I'd like to go out there and see the contours, see how much slope is out there, what we're looking at, so that even in the future, we know what we're talking about in explanations.
Dan?
I agree with Dan very much so, because that, educationally for me too, it'd be good for future, like you said. And then really get a good eye view. It really helped us out a lot, so.
Yep.
I concur with Dan.
Oh,
I also concur.
Charlotte?
I agree. Usually I say absolutely no to building in a bluff, but there are bluffs and there are bluffs, and I'd like to see it.
Okay. Do I hear a motion here?
I'll make a motion to plan a site meeting and then also for November 6th.
Continue to November 6th for site inspection.
Site inspection.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded.
Aye, Dan Dick.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, John.
Hi, Charlotte.
Hi, Dan Mall.
Thank you.
We'll set a meeting at the end of the meeting, or we'll set the inspection at the end of the meeting and we'll let you know.
Just let me know. Sounds good. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
We'll send it to you too, Bernie.
Yeah, please do.
Thanks,
Thanks, you guys have a good weekend.
On trial or something.
Okay.
All right, give your name, Terry, please.
Cindy Lloyd.
All right, Mr. Chairman, this is a 9.97 acre property in Maple Lake Township. The request is for an attached garage addition that is 10 by 22 and would bring the structure 22 and a half feet from the side property line. Due to zoning, it's a 30-foot side yard setback requirement for primary structures. The existing structure is compliant. They're also proposing a number of other additions on the property, and since this is now, the request will be for non-compliance, the board should review these as part of the totality of the request. If the applicant had done the attached garage first and got the variance and then wanted to do the addition secondly, we would require them to come back to the board for an expansion of what is now a structure that was approved by the board. So we're looking at it as a totality of the request. I do have plans. It was explained there is going to be a footprint addition on the opposite side from the garage. Also, redo of the upper level and an expansion of the upper level over the new footprint, and also a wraparound porch addition, all that within or meeting the setback requirement, but part of now a proposal to be less than that 30 feet. So I really don't have a whole lot more to add. We did receive approval from the township, but I did not receive any other responses. So
I do have a letter from the next door neighbor as well, if you
if
want.
you have it and you want to submit it, I gotta take it now. I thought I read that in the township's minutes.
Yeah. That's just a copy.
This would be from Ryan and Holly Bodie.
Can you share that, or can I see that, or what?
Sure. If you want, just pass it on down. Sure. Put it at the end, I'll grab it when we're done.
Can you read it? Okay, I've got the original copy, I just don't want to,
No, that's fine.
okay.
But now, is there anything else you want to add? Your turn to expand on what you're looking at doing.
Well, I think you explained it well. I just, when we bought our house, we bought it knowing that we would want to expand on it. And having 3 kids and lots of bikes and things, expanding the garage by a 3rd stall for that, and not only that, but just for resale value as well. You know, building a nice, pretty house, you kind of want 3-stall garages for future resale, so. And our neighbors are not right next to us, they're back on their, like if you show that other picture, Barry, please. Yeah, so,
You want that one?
Nice, yep.
yeah, so our house is closer to the road here. This is our house here. And they're back far, so adding that 3rd stall isn't going to impact them any, and they said that they don't care if we do it, so. Hoping you guys don't either. You guys
Okay.
do you have any questions for me?
No,
We
We will.
probably will as we go through.
as we go
Oh,
through.
okay.
We back to Dan down here, I think.
Okay, yeah.
Start over, Charlotte.
Looking through it and,
Charlotte, have you started yet?
yeah, she started.
Pardon?
Have you started? Have I,
I don't even remember.
yeah, well, neither
just
do I,
somebody-
that's why I'm
somebody go.
asking. Okay, we'll go back to Dan.
Okay. Looking through it, I didn't see anything other, that 22-foot variance. It seems like still a lot of area to get through there. And I see what you're trying to do, it fits the home after you do that, so I guess I don't have really any concern with it.
I did have a concern, and that was the neighbor to the north, but thankfully your neighbor wrote a nice letter saying it was okay. So that was really my big concern and the other neighbors. And based on what I've seen, I don't have any objections.
Charlotte?
Yeah, generally I'm not, in favor of taking a conforming parcel and making it non-conforming. However, the neighbor, doesn't have a problem with it, and usually in a case like this with the side yard setback, you're looking at two structures that are squeezed together, but the
Right.
neighbor to the north is offset quite a bit, so there isn't any closeness to the adjacent structure, so I'm okay with it.
Okay. Dan?
And I, also looking at it, the house is already there existing. So to do any addition onto it or do anything, you know, for another garage, you're gonna have to get closer to the property line. So in my mind, there is somewhat of a hardship there, or a difficulty. And we're still at 22 feet. There's enough room there to drive a vehicle, or, you know, you're not infringing that heavily on the property line. And the rest of the additions, looking at that, I mean, we're on a nine acre lot. It's not like we're trying to do this type of expansion onto a 1 or 2 acre lot. So, no, I can go along with what's being proposed for a variance from the side yard property line.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the request for variance as regulated in section 155.026 and 155.0949 F3, chapter 155, title 15, land usage and zoning of Wright County Code of Ordinance for the expansion and remodel of an existing dwelling and attached garage that includes construction of a third stall garage addition 22.5 feet from the north side of the lot at the closest point.
I hear a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, Dan seconds. All in favor?
Discussion?
Or discussion?
Just a quick bit of discussion, just so the applicant is aware that with this being approved and now being less than that setback, any additions that are done to decks or anything else on the house has to come back to this board because they've approved it as a specific set of plans. And so if between now and the application, this expands, you gotta come back. So this is what you're approved, anything more has to come back to the board.
Just a question on that, Barry. If we were to not do the expansion off to the south side,
Yep.
would I have to come back? Or if we just do
No,
the addition
No,
above?
you would have 3 years to fully realize this plan.
Okay,
And so if you didn't do it all right now, you just wanted to do a portion, you could do that portion now, and then still, within 3 years, come back and do the addition off the south side.
okay.
After 3 years, you would have to come back to the board to do the addition on the south side, because the variance is good for 3 years.
Okay,
All right?
thank you.
Dan, Vic, aye.
Fall, aye.
John, aye.
Charlotte, aye.
Dan Mall? Aye.
All right, there you go. Just
Thanks,
get
guys.
your plans in order and
Best court visit
give the
you ever
office a
had.
call when you're ready to submit.
Best court visit you ever had, right?
My only court visit I've ever had.
I hope it's the only one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
A request for a lot line adjustment to add a 2.5 acre, what we would call a restricted back lot to the applicant's lakeshore lot that is across the street. I really don't have a whole lot more to add. This is an area that has a platted road. The platted road is not very wide. It is privately maintained. And so this is a situation where this right of way has backup to other properties, so it'd be difficult to vacate and do anything like that. But this is like as mentioned, that 2.5 acres, and it's kind of laid out as shown there. That includes some high ground as well as just a little bit of wetland. So we did receive approval from the township and motion as long as they adjoin the property with the landowner's existing property. And so that's as we see in others, this is done through administrative order. So if the board approves it, there's an administrative order we'll do tying it together. We did receive a neighbor comment from Cindy Cook. She has indicated she has concerns, and she's not sure how they can be owned in common with a private road running between the lots, which, as referenced, we do an administrative order tying them together. And she doesn't know his intentions with the lot and why it would need to be owned in common with the lakeshore lot, and did mention this is a private road which homeowners pay to maintain. So she did have concerns. So that's what I got. So Ryan, do you have anything more to add?
Yeah, so I don't, with regard to that concern, it doesn't matter to me if it's conjoined or not. Basically, we purchased this lot on Maple Lane last month. We're looking to purchase a lot next door to it. And I'm just looking to buy the land. I'm not looking to do anything with it. I want to, have land for my kids to run around on, and, a third of this land is swamp. And so, it's not like I can do anything with it. So I just want the land that butts up to the back of my house. So, like I said, my kids can run around back there and play. So.
Okay.
And I think this is originally zoned general ag. However, in the long-range plan, I think it's R2. And like I said, the swamp is probably 30% of this property. So I don't know how it got zoned general ag, but that's beside the point. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Back up here,
That's me.
you.
Yeah. Normally, it's my understanding, or at least my position, I can only speak for myself here, but, backlots are created for situations where they have small lakeshore lots where, septic systems need to be considered in the future. And that's really the primary purpose of that, and everything else is kind of secondary. And so one of my questions is do you have an existing compliant septic system? Are you planning on putting a septic system in your back lot in the future?
So right now, today, the property that we do own, there is a mound system on the property. However, our long-term plan in the next 3 to 5 years is to acquire the property next door to us and then combine those two lots, not basically demo the two houses, and then we would probably have to use that back lot and put a septic if and when we did that.
Okay. Well, thank you. One of my other concerns is, and it's a big one, it's the size of the lot that you're asking for, and I'm really concerned on the precedent that we're setting here. It's really kind of almost like a backdoor way to circumvent small acreage parcels, subdividing by using a back lot. While I understand a lot of it is somewhat swamp and useless, I would like to see the back lot limited to the width of your lot as a general rule is what we've done. And I guess because of the size that you're asking, I'm not comfortable with the variance as presented. Thank you.
Okay, Charlotte?
Yeah, I disagree with that. If we wanted to have backlots that were limited to the width of the, riparian lot, we have that in the ordinance, and we don't have it in the ordinance. One example is the first, applicant that we dealt with today. Similar situation, lakeshore lot with an acre, on the back.
If I may, Charlotte,
Opposite several other property owners on the riparian. So I'm fine with this 2.5 acre lot as long as it's tied to the riparian lot for purposes of sale and development. I feel like there's a willing seller and a willing buyer, and we don't have any ordinance restrictions against it.
Barry?
Charlotte, just for a clarification, there is a slight difference between this and the one previous. The one previous, that was an old lot of record that was platted at that size, at 1.27 acres. That wasn't something that the board or anybody else created. That was a platted lot from the 1950s. And so there is a difference in that. And as far as the ordinance,
Yeah, but in general, what we had was a large back lot opposite 4 or 5 riparian lots. No matter how it was started, that was the effect of it. And that occurs on many ways.
Okay. Dan?
Some of my question is, on a 2.5 acre lot, is there a building entitlement with that area?
that's not part of the request.
Not part of the request.
And just for more clarification, it's in the land use plan as ag residential, which requires a 10-acre lot minimum, not R2, which is a 2.5 acre lot minimum. So this wouldn't meet the standards within the AR district. Even if rezoned, it's unlikely to go to an R2. It's more likely to be AR, 10-acre lot minimum. And with the road being there, that road would have to go through some substantial updates before it's likely that any type of residential development would take place. There would have to, the right-of-way has to be widened, and a full township road would have to be established in there before this would be eligible for residential development.
Okay, now going to the next step of some of the things we've just been dealing with, it's a 2.5 acre, it's zoned agricultural, right?
Yep.
So we can put an awfully big pole shed on there, can't we?
It would be allowed 2,000, actually, since it's not restricted to the 2,000 square foot maximum size, it would be, if at 2.5 acres, it would be 3,200 square feet.
So, you know, we allow something like this. It's not something we I mean, not that we can't, it's in the ordinance, but now you're looking at,
I forgot one thing, and that's what kind of left my mind when I was addressing some of Charlotte's comments, is that actually the ordinance does not allow this at all. The creation of backlots are an exception that the board and our office has allowed to the ordinance to create restricted backlots. Our ordinance actually does not specifically allow the creation of restricted backlots. It is something that, what's that? What's that?
Silence.
It's silent on backlot.
No, in the general agricultural district, the only permitted use is a buildable lot with an entitlement. It's not silent, and then any other use, which the division of property is considered a use, is prohibited. And so it is not necessarily silent because it does not specifically allow it, it is then prohibited. Any use not specifically mentioned is considered a prohibited use. And so between staff and our boards, we have made exceptions to that rule when dealing with small lakeshore lots in order to get them area for septics and buildings. So it's not something that is allowed in the ordinance, it's actually prohibited in the ordinance. We've just made an exception to give some people along lakeshore with extremely small lots the ability to do septics and garages. And so that's the more accurate interpretation of that. The board actually in 2007 heard a request for a 10-acre restricted division out of a farm, so somebody 5 miles away could have a garden. And the zoning administrator at the time, his interpretation was this was a use variance, would not accept the application. He appealed that to the board, and the board said they upheld that ruling that it was a use variance on a property that size in that area, not near Lakeshore. And so we have a stance by this board on these, and one is Lakeshore lot, something attached to a Lakeshore lot, we will hear it, we will make a determination on it. Anything larger is considered a use variance and strictly prohibited. So that's kind of the history of how we got here. And so it is not allowed in ordinance, and the board has used general guidelines. Now, I'm not saying the board doesn't have the ability to approve this, you certainly do. But it's up to you on what you want to do, because this is an exception, the ability to even apply for this is an exception that the board and staff have allowed in situations where there's small lakeshore lots.
Thanks for the clarification.
You're welcome.
And along with that, in the past, we've been here on this board and we've approved some back lots, but they've all been attached to the lots in front for the lake for sewer systems. I think it was Ada was the last one we did, Ida.
Oh, actually, the last one we did was Lampe's on Granite.
Lampe's,
And then we did Ida, and we did have one request that didn't go through on Lake John this spring, in May, I believe it was. So, I mean, we hear a number of these every year.
Right. But the one on Lake John that didn't go through, that wasn't exactly a joint, that was kind of down the road, and it was a backlot, and we didn't approve that
And
one
it was-
because it wasn't an adjoint.
And it was close to an acre in size, which that
Right.
was brought up as part of the hearing as well.
And looking at this one, there's, even if he buys one more lot there to build a larger house, there's still several lots there that in the future may have failing septics, and then either they're gonna have to ask him, or, we're tying the hands potentially, and it's in agricultural land, and it makes me nervous that there becomes, you look at the topo of it, and there's all of a sudden gonna be a large pole shed or a large building built in, and then that does create a difference in the neighborhood. And we're asking your,
Wouldn't I have to come back if I wanted to put any building on it? Because that's not my ask. I have no intent, I just want the land and left as is.
If you meet setbacks.
if you can meet the setbacks, it's general ag, so there's no reason that I know of you would. And as of today, you're correct, you do not have those intentions. But 5 to 10 years from now, intentions change, boat storage is needed, camper storage is needed, bicycle storage is needed. It changes, and that's what we have to look at here as a board, what we're allowing and what will that create, and also what we've done in the past.
And as far as the road setback, I haven't done an evaluation here, but we would look at all the structures within 300 feet, or on each lot, the closest structure to the road, we would do an evaluation on how close, and then we could apply an average of what those structures are. I haven't done that here. It might be less than 65 feet. In no case can it be closer than 20 feet from the right-of-way, but it could be closer than the 65 feet. In all actuality, there's 13 feet between that 20 feet and the 65. So but it could potentially be administratively approved closer than 65 to the road. And it does appear that there's, adequate area at 65 if it's required for that to put it, although it would take some dirt work, because you're looking at, 8 feet of elevation drop from the 65 feet to the swamp. And so but there again, that's something that, for the most part, we really don't.
Have excavator can move dirt.
Yeah. Retaining wall, backfill, slab, build it.
And, property is just being purchased. I mean, we have an ordinance. Doesn't mean have to give backlot. We have to preserve our backlots for failing sewer potentials too. You look at these lots, they're all small lots. They're not like they're all large lots there either. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, Dan?
Well, my notes are saying we're putting a potential hardship on the other lakeshore residents. And with that being, I mean, I can't say what's gonna be in the future, but I think septic start failing, we have an issue there, and when he's doesn't have to sell those, part of his lots to those people. So I would say, I like Paul's thought, keep it in line. I'm not opposed to them having something same in line with the property you have and stretching out to that for the kids to play in or whatever, but I don't think we should be taking the whole 2.5 just because of the potential hardship it would cause the other residents. I'm on.
Right,
Yeah,
but would the current owner would have to agree to sell the land as well? And she could say no.
Sure, yep, I agree with that.
Yeah,
That's
I agree with that.
definitely a true statement.
Yep. I agree
So,
with
I mean, I feel like we're making decisions on hypotheticals. Like,
So, if I could interject here, this board doesn't opine as to hypotheticals. We deal with what's before us, and what's before us is something that the board is indicating they're probably not going to agree with. We can't articulate what a private party is going to do with a potential sale. We can articulate what the possible parameters are. So, if you want to go back and talk to the property owner about what the board's comments are and come back, you're more than welcome to. Or if you want the board to proceed as is, we can do that, or we can withdraw your application at this point in time. I guess it's really up to you how you want to proceed, given the board's comments.
so the board would, the way it's proposed right now, the board would not approve it. Is that what you're saying?
The comments I've heard from the board right now would indicate that it probably direct me to draw findings consistent with denial.
Okay, so if that happens, then I could go back to the owner but you are willing to do a back lot the width of my property, and I guess my question to that is, how is that gonna work if I'm trying to buy the property next door to me? Like, and that might take 2 or 3 years. So I would have to basically put all this on hold until that happens?
Well, you can come back and try to expand it later with another application.
Okay, and if we move forward and it's denied, I could bring back a new proposal.
Well, if you're,
Yeah.
or we
If
could,
you get something different, you probably should do it now, since you have an application here.
I would say yes, continue, oops, sorry. The best way to go about that would be to continue it, go back and talk to the owner, come back with a revised proposal of something of smaller size, kind of as mentioned by the board, basically just an extension of what the lakeshore property lines are. I mean, is the board looking at a size? I mean, I just did a quick measure and, you know, just kind of squaring things off. I mean, we're looking at 30 to 40,000 square feet. Just, and there again, this is nothing, this is just me drawing on a map saying, okay, if you extend property lines straight back, maybe take in a little bit of the wetland. I don't know, you don't have to, you know, something like that. I mean, you're looking at 40,000 square feet, so about 3/4 of an acre. Or actually, probably more than that, more like 8/10 of an acre, 8,500, or 8,500ths of an acre. So, you know, that is, there again, me just drawing, but it's up to the board. You know, do you have a parameter on size you do or don't want to see? Just because I don't want the applicant coming back with an acre and a half, extending farther, and the board says, no, that's still too big. You know, is there a general parameter you would set in this situation?
For me, the general parameter was line up with your property lines, basically like you've drawn it, Barry.
Yep.
Because then you have a back lot, you have ability for sewer back there on that size of an acreage. It's what we look for the hardship. Your sewer fails, we need to get it across the road away from the lake.
Yep.
You know, that's not hypothetical, sewers fail.
Yep.
And in this case, we went back far enough to allow for some high ground for that septic system. In a case if the high ground was closer, then maybe we would shorten it up. But in this case, the size is determined where the best septic system
Right.
be located.
And if he's to buy the property next door, or next to it, and wants to expand another same, you know, I mean, can come back and petition for it and see what the board does at that time.
Now, if he does that too, that I think would open it up to potentially maybe talk to all the neighbors there about doing backlots for everyone at this time. That's open to him.
Yeah, that's up to them and the property owner.
Yep.
Well, I'm not sure if the applicant is on a laptop and can see the presentation or not, so what I'm gonna do is I'm saving this, what I drew, and say, these are the general guidelines that the board is looking at.
Okay,
I'm okay with that. Yep.
So, quick question, so I would actually be fine with the way it's drawn out, but if I buy the lot next door to me on the right, you would not be willing to extend that line to that lot with the assumption I'm gonna be trying to buy that lot? I would.
Not at this point in time. The board would be willing to entertain another application at the future date if you actually end up buying that lot. Yes, you can always apply to extend it.
Yeah.
But at this point in time, the board does not appear to be willing to do that on a hypothetical that you may purchase in 3 to 5 years.
Okay. So, do I need to go, like, if I agree with this area, would you guys be willing to approve it based on that as long as the property owner agrees to it?
The board can't give you a guarantee, but it looks as if the discussion would indicate they would approve it.
Greg, they can approve based on this revision that is now, would be held in the file.
Right, but I guess my question is that I'm trying to avoid having to go to the woman that's gonna sell me the land and then bring it back to you.
Right.
And I'm trying to just say, we just agree that if the woman agrees to sell this and the way it's proposed, then I wouldn't have to come back to the board and you guys would approve it as is.
Barry, I guess this comes up to the board, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Well, the applicants appeared once. If this is the final plan, I mean, you could approve it based on them doing a letter and not having it reappear. It's up to the board. But either way, the board would continue this matter at this point in time. They wouldn't approve it right now, but you could always waive your appearance, I think. Mr. Chair, maybe you want to opine
Greg,
your thoughts as to that, but I'm fine with them waiving it.
Greg, I think the board would be well within their standing to just approve it now. I don't see the holdup. I mean, what I just drew up is a basic guideline that follows the property lines, and the board could condition it that based on the revision displayed and prepared at the meeting with a maybe not to exceed, 40,000 square feet. And so you have a general concept that's been approved, you have a maximum property size. The board's already stated no wider than the width of the existing one lot he owns. That, to me, for a back lot, covers everything we see and get when we deal with other applicants.
And if you don't need a survey and you're good, Barry, let's go for it.
I'm good with it. If the board is ready and good with kind of what was drawn, because that, to me, that, I just kind of drew up something, well, this is roughly what the board, and so as long as it's roughly, I would say staff would be most comfortable with a not to exceed size as far as total, but that's.
I'm fine with that too. I just don't know as far as building size, what could he build on there? Other than the primary use would be for septic.
At less than an acre, it's 1,400 square feet.
Okay. So that sounds better than 3,200.
Actually, it's 1,600 total unless the board wants to put a limitation on the size as we do with other backlots.
Could we put a limitation as primary, reserve enough space for a septic, and then whatever space?
Show a septic location, and then whatever the accessory structure size is, you could either limit it or just leave it as the ordinance requirements. This is not R1, so he's not limited to that 1,400. He'd be allowed 1,600 total at less than an acre.
okay,
I can
okay.
make a motion, give a whirl, okay. I request a lot line adjustment as per Exhibit A. Does that sound about right?
Yep.
And not to exceed 40,000 square feet. Does that sound reasonable? Oh, yeah, so, I'm sorry, I can go through all the other stuff if you
No,
want.
no, you don't need to. I would say that before a structure is built, a septic location must be identified and preserved. That's
Okay,
generally
so
how we handle
noted,
that.
added to my motion.
I'll second
And
it.
the sidelines match the lake lot?
Yes.
Yeah,
We want to put that in there?
Yeah, that would be Exhibit A,
exhibit A.
the way Barry has that
That's
drawn
true.
up.
Well, actually, exhibit A may not be exact, I mean, is the,
Right.
so,
Yes, yeah, you're good. It's, Exhibit A is still fine. It doesn't have to be exact.
It's been moved
I'll second it.
and seconded.
one-
Barry?
We still have discussion on that. So if he buys a property next to him then too, and then extends that out there, I still would like to keep that at that
Well,
1,600.
which the board can discuss that, because he's gonna
Okay.
have to come back.
Okay. fine then.
My one would be subject to administrative order tying the back lot to, the lakeshore lot, so it'd be subject to survey and administrative order. So Ryan, you would have to survey it, get us the survey, we would type up a document that says your lakeshore and this lot cannot be sold separately, and then you would sign it, we would record it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay?
Who is the second?
Dan,
Thank you.
okay?
Dan Vick, aye.
Paul, aye.
John, I.
Charlotte, aye.
Dan Mall, aye.
So Ryan, just get that survey done, get that to us. I'll email you what I had prepared so you have a general guideline.
Okay.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Is this break time now, or?
Give your name to Terry, please.
I'm sorry,
Give your name to Terry.
Heather Nimcheski.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is a 35,978 square foot lakeshore lot on Dean Lake. The request is for a roadside addition to the existing attached garage, 20 by 22. The addition will bring the structure to 7.5 feet at the closest point from the side property line. It's going onto a house that is 80 feet from the ordinary high water mark. Dean Lake is a recreational development lake, which has a 100-foot lakeshore setback requirement. So it's the side yard setback that we need to vary and expansion of a non-conforming structure. I do have the survey of the property showing where the proposed garage is going, as well as the plans for the garage and pictures of the current site. We did receive approval from the township, and they did indicate removal of a 12 by 20 shed was part of the proposal, and so they will be getting rid of an existing shed. We did receive a comment from Mary Schifferly, it'd be the neighbor to the west, opposite of where the garage is going, and her comment indicates that from her understanding of the building size and location, it's too large for the area and too close to the access road, and she is not in favor of the variance. Just for clarification on that, actually, the road setback is no issue here at all. I mean, it meets everything that's required for the road setback, so it's not, although it's getting closer to that road, it's not actually within the road setback, so. Bit of clarification. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Do you have anything more to add, Heather?
The one comment that I'd like to make is currently you can see the roof line is, the water runoff would go towards the lake over the existing garage. So if you're looking at that back view on the bottom image, the garage goes about 4 feet from the patio door. We're gonna actually change the roof line so it's going perpendicular to the current roof line. So it would actually prevent as much runoff going towards the lake. It would be going into that side yard, which is pretty flat, a few feet from the back of the house. And then at the front of the existing garage, we're at actually 101 feet from the high water mark. So the addition that 20-foot addition on the front actually meets that setback requirement from the lakeside.
Okay? Charlotte?
Is there anyone on the WebEx meeting for this request? Does not appear so.
Okay, Charlotte?
Okay, I did hear everything the applicant said, but the proposed addition is behind the setback line for the ordinary high water mark, so I'm okay with that. I'm not crazy about the 7.5 foot setback from the property line, but the house is where it is, and there appears to be almost 15 feet between the corner of the garage and the neighboring, the mount system, yeah. And the other corner of the garage looks like it meets the side yard setback, doesn't it, Barry? Isn't it about 15 feet
Yes,
or more?
yes.
So, given all of that, I would be happy to go along with this.
All right, Dan?
Along with what Charlotte said, but I'd still have a little bit of a hang up on the 7.5 feet, because that is close. And we, as, you know, with variances before, we've tried to keep them a little further away than 7.5 feet, because it is close to a property line. And then you get property disputes and things happen.
Barry, could you go back to that?
Yeah, I'll go back to
last
the survey.
Thank you. So as you can see, there's an existing mound field on the neighboring lot, so nothing can ever get built there. So
Okay.
you are still at that 15 feet from that mound system at the nearest point of that garage. Unfortunately, we've got kind of a pie-shaped lot, so.
Yeah. So, along with that, I mean, I can see the hardship or the difficulty to keep everything in line, and with what they're proposing to do with the water runoff and stuff. I guess I can go along with it.
Okay. Dan?
I have a lot of concern with 7.5 feet too. What size could she be allowed at 10 feet? Because 7.5 feet, if they put a fence right on the property line, you now can't get a truck and a trailer back there to the back of your property on that side.
Well, you could, in this case, I mean, there's 100 feet from the other property line. You go around. You know, it's not like we're looking at a, 50 or 60 foot wide lakeshore lot where, you need to get around in the front somehow.
Yeah.
In this case, they have room in between the sewer and the house, about 35 feet, to drive and get a truck or a trailer if they wanted to go down to the bottom and get around. To answer your question, it's about half, there'd be about 10 feet. That's about all they could add and still be at 10 feet. So they'd have to basically cut their addition almost in half.
Yeah. Do you mind if I give a little background?
Well, I understand why you want to do the garage, but it is tough for 7.5 feet. I just don't quite see that, because a car needs 8, on a garage door to get in, and 9 is nice, and you ain't hitting the mirrors. So I'm just thinking, if we could be happy with a 9 foot or some space in there, I'd be much more.
Financially, to rip up a driveway and do all of that, it doesn't make sense to do it for the square footage.
I can't quite hear you, but.
Financially, to only do 10 feet, it doesn't make sense to rip up a driveway, put in frost footings, change a roof line.
I understand that. It's just the lot, but the house, I know the house is built close. If you get it back down to 9, I'd be okay with that. 7.5 to me is just too small. I just don't think that'll work. I know that you can't tell them not to put a fence there, and then.
I don't know how you would put a fence on, or why you would, and when you're would be prevent lake shore view, with the neighbors. We've got a good relationship with them, and obviously people move, but They were not concerned when we talked to them because we had them out there when the survey was being done to make sure that we were kosher with them. That's the
You're
last thing we
coming out
wanted to
10
do.
feet from the house, so like, if it's 6 feet from the house, what would you get at that about? Without cutting it in half, I'm just trying to get a, it's not right if we do 7.5. We've had a few guys that were 9 and stuff, and
Well, I mean, even at 9, I mean, you're looking at, that would be a 14-foot addition. I mean, it's because of the angle of the house and the angle of the property line, it's quick, it's whoop, and you're there. And so any reduction in a 7.5 is a significant, or any reduction in the length, or trying to meet anything other than 7.5 is a significant reduction just because of the angles of the two. You know, they're converging angles.
yeah.
So, I mean, to me, it's up to the board, but that's just the sheer fact here is that because of the angles, it gets close fast. And that's why we went, in 20 feet, we're going from a compliant 15-foot setback to half.
Yeah.
Only in 20 feet because of those angles. And so in this case, and they're not even projecting outward, they're just going in line, but it's those two angles, it adds up quick.
So if you did a 16-foot addition, would you be I'm just trying to get as big as possible on that side thing, and it's 4 feet off of it, I think you'd gain a foot on your width. From just me looking at it in my eyes, but that's my concern.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one. So a 16-foot would be about 8.5, plus or minus
That would be
8.5,
A
9.
little bit better for me. That was just my concern.
I
Paul.
appreciate.
I'd like to hear what the rest of the board has to say, it might change my mind.
Can I give a little background on the property? We purchased the home in 2016. 2 months after we moved in, we had an inch of rainfall and we had waterfalls coming through the basement walls. Fully finished, could never have seen this without tearing down sheetrock. So we bought the house in July. September Labor Day weekend, we tore down the sheetrock, planning on doing drain tile. Had a company come out, they wouldn't touch it. He said, you need to have somebody who can fix foundations, had safe basements out. He literally told us we needed to move out that day because the house could cave in at any moment. We lifted the house, put an entirely new foundation underneath this house, including frost footings, updated everything we touched because that's what you have to do. And if you can imagine, that was a lot of updating. We ended up putting $150,000 into this house to make it what it is today, without a choice, because you either walk away from it and ruin your credit and, lose your home, or you fix it. And during that process, because the house is grandfathered in, we got stuck doing exactly what it is because we were hitting snowfall. So we've been through a lot, and we're just looking to clean up the property, get rid of a shed that's on the west side of the lot to get rid of squirrels and chipmunks that are living in it by extending this and becoming a little bit more whole. The other part, when we lifted the house, there was an illegally created den underneath the garage. So when we went to replace it, we found out that that was put in without the proper variance, so we couldn't replace it. So maybe, it's a blessing that we didn't get to replace it, because who knows, maybe that would have caved in too. But so we lost square footage we thought we had from a storage perspective when we purchased the home. And so we're just trying to get some of that back, being on a lake with growing kids.
Okay. Paul?
Sorry to hear about that. However, in some cases, we can't consider money and costs and things when we do
I
this.
understand that.
But what I do, and I did appreciate, was how you have the roof line changed and how you're draining the water away from the lake. That's a big issue for me, and thank you. The 7 feet is a concern, but, considering that this is a modest addition compared to a lot of things we see, I don't have a problem with it, so.
Charlotte?
I've already said it.
Oh, okay.
Back to you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and I agree basically with Paul on some of the things we see is, So,
I can
do I
only
hear a
imagine.
motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the variance as regulated in section 155.026, 155.049, F2, and 155.057, Chapter 155, Title 15, Land Usage and Zoning of the Wright County Court of Ordinance to build a 20 by 22 foot roadside addition to an attached garage to be 7.5 feet at the closest point from the side property line. The house is 80 feet from the ordinary high water mark of the lake.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Dan Vig, nay.
All aye.
John, aye.
Charlotte, aye.
Dan Mall, aye.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, do we want to call a 5-minute recess?
5-minute recess.
Yeah, just have your.
To Terry, please.
You ready, Frank? All right, we're good to go. Yep, give your names to Terry, please.
Timothy Bussey.
Carol Bussey.
My presentation going here. Yes, Mr. Chairman, the property's a 5.4 acre parcel. Actually, it's two parcels. Based on state statute, the smaller parcel must remain owned in common with the larger parcel due to being a backlot in the size. And so it's not considered a separate parcel, so we included that size in with the size of the regular parcel. The property is zoned R1. There was a little bit of discussion. The zoning administrator and I did some research on it, and you know, this isn't a platted property, it's a meets and bounds, so how did it get that R1 designation? We really can't find a specific hearing or anything else where it's coming from, but the assumption we have is it's done because of the lack of the road frontage. This is off a 33-foot platted right-of-way, and so it was included in the R1's district as well as all the other platted lots that are currently around it. And so that's, there again, our assumption on why it was put in the R1 district that was done prior to both him and I, you know, being here. And so it's there. How it got there is older, and we don't see the history of it, but it is considered, it is in our R1 zone right now, as we can see. So due to the fact that it's in the R1 zone, the R1 zoning has the stipulations we have talked about already at this meeting, where if it's got 3 different levels for accessory structures. Lots less than 20,000 square feet, you're limited to 800 square feet. Between 20,000 and 80,000, you're limited to 1,400. And this is for single structure, not total. And then lots over 80,000, it's a 2,000 square foot max limit. Now, based on 5.4 acres, this property is allowed 4,000 square feet of accessory buildings. And so the proposed structure is 2,880 square feet. And so with the other structures and what's going to be removed from the property, he's still within the 4,000 square feet. Ends up being 38 or 3,900 if I'm not mistaken. So we're really close, but he's still within that 4,000 square foot limitation, but it is 880 square feet over the 2,000 square feet for a single structure in the or in the R1 district. So that is in totality what I have from a staff perspective. We did receive the township's approval. And with this size of structure, and in the R1 district, it's also limited to a 14-foot sidewall, which in this case, they're requesting a 16-foot, which not R1 at this acreage, it would be allowed 16 feet. So if this was a 5.4 acre entitlement division, they're allowed 16-foot sidewalls. It's the 5 acres and up is where the 16-foot comes into play, except in the R1 district. So that is what I got. Township approves. Do you have anything more to add?
As this gentleman said, yes, my total square footage would be 3,760 square feet with the buildings that I already have on the property. I'm looking for an oversized building. That I'm looking for is because I have a 38-foot motor home, and I could leave a trailer hooked up to it, which is a 20-foot trailer. So that puts me over the, I mean, my allowable right now would be a 40 by 50, and that's only 50 foot long, so I wouldn't even get almost anything in there with a trailer hooked up. I have a 7-year-old grandson that races snowmobiles. My truck is 20 foot long, and the trailer is 25 foot long, and it's nice to be able to come in and open the doors at night. We get home at 10 o'clock at night after racing and open the doors so things air out, and I can't even open the door at that. The 16-foot sidewalls is only, I mean, I'd like to go with a 14, but my motorhome's 12 and a half feet high. I mean, that's the lowest I can get it to get in through a door. And they go in 2-foot segments on doors, so I got to go to a 14-foot door, which puts my ceiling height at 16 feet. And the R1 deal, it sounds like it's a little unclear, but it is what it is. Like he said, it is zoned R1. It doesn't show on there where the building's going to go, but none of my neighbors will even see it. Well, my neighbor to the west will see about the top half of it because I'm surrounded in trees, totally surrounded in trees. If you look at that, the big parcel, it'd be on lower left-hand corner, yeah, there you go. The 40 by 72 right there. So everything's surrounded in trees, nobody from the road will even see it, which I'm probably 100 feet off the County Road 33. But there's that whole group of trees in there that it's just dense.
All right, is there anyone on the WebEx call with any comments? Okay, Mr. Chairman, go ahead.
Okay, and now you're,
Yep. I have some reservations in an R1 zoning to put this in, and then looking at the way you're positioning it and what you're saying and how you want to drive in, and where the trees and where your location is and the size of your property. Are you gonna come into your driveway, come up towards the existing pole shed and then circle around? And then
That's
is there
correct.
enough room to back out of there again and get back onto the driveway?
Yes.
Because you've got a large property, and if you're sticking it way in the back corner or secluding it, it's, the 16 foot is what's got, and I understand with where your camper and what you need it for, but the 16 foot is a tall, very large building going into an R1 zoning. Like you say, we can't change that, it's there. I understand what you're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to get, but I'm struggling with a reason or a hardship to go to 16 foot just to store your camper. Some of the things, I mean, I understand what you want to use it for, I get that, but we have to come up with some type of a reason to be able to give a variance in that zoning district. And I'm not there, so I guess if some of the other members can get me there, I'm more than willing to listen.
okay. Ken?
Me? I don't have a camper, but I understand your concern for height. But I was able to manage that by putting a sliding door in there, double slider, and then you get your full height of 14 foot. So you could consider that. I'm with Dan, and it's R1, it's R1. You know, if you had that set up where you're gonna drive right through, I would understand an overhead door more so than you're backing up anyway. So it ain't gonna be like you're opening and going every day. So I think the 14 foot height would be good. If you could shrink it a little bit and length too, but I'm not as particular on that as I am on the height. My concern would be 14 foot high. I didn't ask for a variance. I just got done building mine because I know that I'm compliant and I'd like to stay that way. So I'm staying with the 14 foot height, and I think you can get it with a sliding door. That'd be what you want, but.
Oh,
I came here originally with a really strong opinion of no, but, listening to Barry's presentation and seeing, the size of your lot, its location, the surrounding area, listening to you, I'm a little more open, but I do have some concerns, as they said. What's interesting, what Barry said, is your R1 classification. It sounds like to me rather unique. And so I'm kind of considering that as a variable for you. Normally, the 16 feet though, I am struggling with. That's probably, if it boils down to nuts and bolts, that's it. 16 feet is, now have you measured the absolute minimum height? I mean, are you, of your...
I have not measured the height, no.
It's a 16, it's a large building in height, as Dan had said, and that's a concerning thing. The size, and consider everything I've heard today, I could go along with putting the building that size in an R1 based on what I've seen. I think there's enough unique, distinct features that I can justify and argue for that, so.
Charlotte?
I missed part of the discussion because I'm timed out or whatever on my phone, but I have a hard time varying the dimensions of accessory structures in R1, as I've said numerous times. I don't see a practical difficulty. Somebody having a lot of recreational equipment is not a practical difficulty. one can always rent the space to store those, and so I'm not in favor of this.
Okay. I kind of look at it the same as Paul has with the R1. Difficulty was 16 feet. And you said you had not really put a tape to that
That is correct.
on your situation. So I guess at this point, without that information, I would not be in favor, personally, of the structure. You get it to 14, again, the large size doesn't affect me too much. I understand where you're coming from there, but
If you can, go back and see if, or we could decide now, but decide, okay, well, I can go with 14. I think there's some people here that would vote in favor of the variance. But I think as it sits now, there's no way.
It sounds, it's from what I've heard from the board, you're okay with the size, or there's a majority that are okay with the size of the footprint. It's all about the height. And so, to me, whether it, regardless of how it measures out, the board has been pretty firm from the comments on the 14 feet. So is there anything that would, if you don't feel there's anything that would truly sway your opinion on the 16 feet, then there would be no point in continuing just for a measurement to say, no, it's not gonna work. Well, we're still gonna say the 14 feet. So, I mean, I hate prolonging things if it's something that isn't gonna change the board's mind ultimately, because I'm not saying it wouldn't, but just from the comments,
Yeah.
that seems to be where the board was at. You really don't like the height more so than anything else. So I guess I wouldn't, it's up to you guys what you wanna do. This is your meeting. But that's just what I heard from you.
If I may throw one more thing in there, I don't want to design your building, but you can put slightly vaulted trusses and clear it on that too, keeping it at 14. So it's not really a good reason. You can get a little overhead door if you want to go overhead. So it's low profile swing. The problem with 16 foot is you could easily double story that and start running more business. So, and the height just, so. I just want to give you those other little options, I don't know if you know that.
Well, I have worked in a building where the door was cut out into the rafters.
I've seen that as well. They design the trusses so that the door can swing up into them. And so you can get that taller door on the gable end.
Well, I think if you would say yes, I'd be willing to change that to 14. I would.
I would change it to 14.
Okay. Well, I'll make a motion then.
sure, go ahead, Mr. Motion.
Let him do it. I have a reputation, they're calling me Mr. Motion Man.
He does it well.
All right, I make a motion to approve the variance of section 155.026 and 155.049, C5C, chapter 155, title 15, land usage and zoning of Wright County Court of Ordinance to allow construction of a 40 by 72 foot, 2,880 square foot storage building exceeding the 2,000 square foot maximum allowable for a single structure with a 14-foot maximum height.
Sidewall.
Sidewall height, thank you.
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Okay,
In the motion, would it be okay if you, added in your practical difficulty, which I understand is the, unusual nature of the zoning of this 5-acre lot as R1. That way, at least historically, we'll have a reason when other people want to have a variance to the size of an accessory structure in R1.
Great catch.
Yes, thank you, Charlotte. I will add that factor, so noted, to my motion.
Move for me.
Amended the second.
Yep, amended.
All right.
all in favor?
Dan Vick, aye.
All aye.
John, aye.
Charlotte, no.
Dan Mall, no.
Passes 3-2. So you're good to go.
All right, thank you.
Have your plans prepared. Try to call ahead before you bring them in for your permit.
Yes.
And we'll get you all ready to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One other thing, that back wall, like, totally screws with my eyes. Oh, really?
That's the first time I've heard that.
Yeah, totally bugs my eyes right now.
Give your names to Terry, please.
Want our masks off? I'm sorry.
You can,
You can take it off if you wish. Give your names to
I
Terry.
can breathe. My name's Tom Mills.
Patty Canisi.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The property right now consists of 2 parcels, a 2.5 acre entitlement division with the current house, and then an adjoining 65 acre parcel with an entitlement. The proposal is to combine the 2.5 acres with the 65 and then do an entitlement division on the south end of the property. That would be approximately 28 acres in size, exceeding the 10 acre maximum size requirement. The property is zoned general agriculture with part S2, which is a little bit more of that northern part, and then is also in the land use plan for general agriculture. I don't have a whole lot to add. The township was in favor of the 28 acre division. So that's all I have. Do you have more to add?
No, I just want to downsize a little bit and build a new house, and 28 acres is plenty for me, and the people wanting the 40 acres of my house is a real nice family, and looking forward to moving in. So I hope you
Yeah, and I think too, that when we were at the township board, they had said that actually was beneficial for them in their land use plan. It gives 2 agricultural properties, and actually the little property is 2.5 acres within that 68 acres, and I really don't know how even that went through. I mean, it just doesn't logically make real sense to even put it in that area. But if the split were allowed, then that property, there's a lean-to behind it, which isn't, you can see it on the, I guess, southeast corner, which isn't then attached to that little 2.5 acres. And then it would just allow that property to actually be used for agricultural use, grazing, whatever, if they wanted to have a few animals.
to raise a family.
Both properties, actually. It would meet the requirements for that to be available.
Okay, Paul, I think we're you finally here.
Yeah, I have a little dilemma. I quite, it's one hand, I look at it and I'm asking myself what any future problems that we're creating by allowing this, and I can't see any, but the other hand, I think of precedent, allowing, we're allowing 3 times the size, So I'm kind of struggling, but in the end, I was reading what the township had said and written, and they're very strongly in favor of it. And, based on that, not seeing any potential problems that I am creating by doing this, I can't, unless I hear differently, I'm not seeing anything other than the precedent issue. I'm fine with it. I don't have a problem with it.
Charlotte?
I agree with Paul. I don't have a problem with it as far as the 28-acre parcel. I don't see any difference between if we gave a 10-acre entitlement property and then had 18 restricted and had them joined. So what's the difference? None of it is tillable anyhow. So unless I hear something really interesting from Dan, I'm in favor of it.
Okay, Dan?
Yeah, that's up in the township I live in. I'm familiar with the property, where it's at. Soil types up there are not, strongly conducive. There's some wetlands in there. There's a beef farmer that would be to the south of your property, correct?
A beef farmer?
Bean.
Beef.
Oh, yeah.
Beef.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, and he
Yeah,
actually comes onto this land,
Yeah,
so.
and so some of the land is pastured already, so it's already used in agriculture. It's right next to the freeway, so I mean, to look at the freeway and that inconvenience of things, to split this off into a 28-acre parcel, it can be used for horses. We have that type of thing in our area a lot, or a few cattle type scenarios, so I don't see a problem with what we're doing. I know in some points we may be setting a precedence for a larger lot, but I think here in this particular area of the county, I think I can go along with it, and it's a favorable thing.
I did forget one thing. Is there anyone on the WebEx call that would like to submit a comment? Does not appear so. Okay, I just wanted to check on that.
Dan?
I had about the same concerns as the rest of them, so I think I'm okay with it though, so.
I will make one note though, and we presented this as it was requested, but in all intents and purposes, the new buyers don't necessarily have to do what's displayed here. They can leave the 2.5 acres a separate piece, leaving the rest of it restricted, potentially for sale or whichever else, or just no building entitlement with it. And so actually combining it isn't a requirement of this. The entitlement division is allowed out of that, and so they could do something less than the full size. They could do something more than the 2.5. They can reconfigure that to be 5 acres around the house and then, leave the rest outside of it restricted. The only thing is you're looking at some other restrictions then, the pole buildings and stuff on the 5 acres, those types of things. So I'm not against them combining it all together, but it's, in all honesty, it's not required. The only other comment I would have is, based on the amount of road frontage here, the board may want to limit that to no further divisions, just because no matter how you would do it, it would appear fairly difficult to do a smaller division with a house and then have the rest be restricted. So that would be the one comment I would have, would be if the board's in favor of it, maybe limit it to, well, it's 28 acres, this is what it has to be. You don't get a mortgage division or anything else, it's just 28 acres.
Okay,
And that 28 acres already, the 65 acres had a building entitlement. So the 28 remaining acres of that, when it's split,
We'll have the building entitlement.
would keep the building entitlement.
Yeah, and that's what the variance is for, it's an entitlement division that exceeds 10 acres.
Right.
Yes,
So that's what it is,
okay.
that's what we're looking at.
Paul?
Oh, I think I already said my.
Okay, I thought you looked perplexed there for a moment.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say, when we make that motion, we might need your help on.
I'm here, I ain't going anywhere.
Okay, all right, do I hear a motion?
I'll make the motion. I need some help here, Barry, just step in. I make the request to approve the variance for section 155.026 and 155.048, G4C, chapter 155, title 15, land usage and zoning of Wright County Code of Ordinance to allow the expansion.
Paul, you want me to just?
Yep, please do.
I would say just jump right in, and just allow the 28 acre entitlement division.
To allow the remaining 28 acres with the remaining building entitlement.
Correct.
And frontage, how did we?
Just no,
Oh.
no further divisions of the 28 acres.
No further divisions of the 28 acres,
and subject to survey and deed restrictions.
subject to survey and deed restrictions.
We already have the soils information for out there, so.
Thank you.
And we've got that set up for Monday, just in case you say yes.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Dan Vick, aye.
Paul, aye. Sorry.
John, aye.
Carol and I,
Dan Mall, aye.
100%. Way to go.
Thanks, guys.
Get the survey, get that submitted, we'll do the deed restriction, you'll have to sign it, and then we're ready to go.
Beautiful.
Thank you
very
so
much. I
much.
appreciate your
If
time.
if the buyers do want to combine that 2.5 with the rest,
So look at me.
it's a form. So they can submit that with their closing documents, we just need to know to prepare it for you and sign it. So,
Could I ask you what the benefit of that would be?
one tax statement, and it takes away any limitations on outbuildings. So if they wanted to build a,
They wanna build a-
16,000 square foot riding arena, they could do it without any issues.
Yep.
Okay.
Where if they keep
combine
it,
the
if
two.
they keep it at 2.5, within that 2.5, they don't get that.
Okay,
So there's benefits and some detractions too, but it's up to them completely. I mean, this can be 3 parcels here. One's gonna be 28, one can either be the 40 or
37.5.
a 2.5 and whatever, or a 5 and whatever.
Yeah.
There's a couple of different ways, so.
Okay, well, thanks for the
Yep,
options.
you're welcome.
I'll leave it up to them.
Have a good
Thank
day.
you so much.
Great day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, give your names to Terry, please.
Kyle Nyquist.
Nyquist.
Okay. Ready to go? Yes, Mr. Chairman, what we're looking at is, next page, 107 acre property, and the request is for an 11.88 acre division of the existing farmstead. That division is on an access strip, does not include more than 2.5 acres of tillable, but would require variances for rear property line setbacks for a number of agricultural buildings on the north end. Those are to follow the existing tree lines and include as little tillable as possible. Really, that's about what we have. So we're looking for an overage in those setbacks for that rear property line. We did receive the township support and approval for both the size and the setbacks because it preserves ag land as much as possible. And we also received Ron Nyquist's response for recommending approval as well. They have no issues with the granting of the variance. That's all I got.
Okay, Dan?
Can you bring up the over, yeah.
Should go to the applicant
But-
first.
Yep, can you bring up the other one, the over, yep. Okay, go ahead.
Is that the last one we?
No,
Do you guys have anything more to add, or if you need to, this is the time to do it.
Nope, pretty much straightforward.
Is there anyone on the WebEx call that has interest in this matter? Hearing no response, go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Dan?
looking at this, and I looked at it also on Beacon last night, going through it and stuff, and looking at some of the angles of where the property lines and where you're proposing to do, and then also looking at the tree lines. Going back to, I know we had a situation here a month or two ago of, property lines and being too close and organic farming type thing and spraying and overages and stuff. But looking at this particular property and on farms and even building sites, trees are important, you know, windbreaks and that kind of stuff, where the one that we dealt with a couple months ago didn't have that. Where this one here's got some tree lines. The bins are, yes, close to the back side of the property lines, but looking at the property from overhead, they're being filled from the front. You know, you're not going back onto the field and filling them. You know, as far as a farming standpoint, you know, you don't have to get to the backside to fill them because you're filling them from the front. And then looking at, you know, I was looking at the angles of, you know, nothing is square or straight per se on the orchard. That's the way the orchard was planted. You know, so I'd have a little bit of concern along the orchard line, you know, for spraying and field spraying and herbicides, drifts onto the apple trees. But, you know, I guess that's something, if they're willing to do that, you're gonna have to work out. But I would be a little concerned there, maybe opening that line up a little bit to be able to get some setback from the field, because that would be a concern for your crop or the crop that is going to be within this separation. So, but looking at it and from what I've seen, I can go along with it, and being a little over 10 acres, it makes sense for what they're trying to do and accomplish. You know, preserve the apple orchard, try to get it as tight as the bends they can along tree lines, preserving field. I can go along with it. That's what I have for input.
We can't separate the orchard from the,
Right.
because there's no access to it without
Right.
going through the yard.
Yep, and that's what I was viewing. My, you know, like I said, my concern would be, you know, are the property lines a little too close to the orchard for agricultural farming and herbicide, you know, atrazines, you know, whatever is sprayed on the fields.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, should that be opened up to maybe a few more feet so you have a buffer zone between the row crop and the orchard?
In 20 years though, of the orchard, we've never had a problem with
Okay.
spraying.
And this is what you're asking for. Those are just my thoughts.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
Dan?
I don't have any concerns with it. I'm okay.
Okay, Paul?
I had some concerns originally based on some prior cases that we had, but Dan did a nice job of alleviating those concerns. And the other concern that I have, and it's been somewhat mitigated, and that's the concern of the farmer in the future. You know, you may not, I'm sure it's a family thing going on here, but you know, there might be a new owner in that home someday, and I didn't want the farmer that farms there to be inhibited from doing his farming because of spraying, because it's so close. But based on, again, what Dan had pointed out, the buffer, the trees and all that, I'm fine with it, so.
Charlotte?
Yeah, I didn't hear exactly what Dan Hall said, but it sounds like in the end, he's fine with it, as am I.
Okay. As am I. Okay.
Just one second, Mr. Chairman, I just want to just look at one little piece. Nothing too serious, I just want to, I didn't see it before, so I want to go back and see if there's any comments from the feedlot administrator. I don't see any. Are there animals in any of these structures now?
We have horses.
Okay.
3 horses.
Just in that lean-to?
Yeah.
So I guess there would be one more setback requirement, and that would be the horses in that existing lean-to. And so, you know, if the board is still fine with that, it's something that,
You'd be on, even if you put in the motion a half a animal unit per acre, you'd still be at 5,
Right.
5.5 or 6,
5.5.
you know,
Yeah, almost 6, almost.
basically almost 6.
I would just say there'd be no expansion of the feedlot closer to that rear line. That, where that is now, must stay in existence the way it is.
Okay, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve a variance of section 155.026 and 155.048, G4C, chapter 155, title 15, land usage and zoning of the Wright County Code of Ordinance to allow the existing farmstead to be sold off on 11.88 acres with an access strip to the highway. Also, a variance to allow setbacks to multiple existing farm buildings that will be less than 30 feet from the side yard, less than 50 feet rear yard, and less than 100 feet from barn and separate animal lean-to to the property, with the stipulation of only a half an animal unit per acre. So no more than a total of 6 animals on the property. And not to expand the feedlot as exists.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded, discussion?
Subject to survey and deed restriction, which we already have the survey, so Terry in our office will type up a deed restriction that you guys would have to sign, saying we're assigning one of our entitlements to the farmstead.
Could I add that, could we allow them like, 0.12 acres if they decide to change that to a border around there?
My guess is that you guys have the survey that already done, you're gonna continue with it with this way.
You're gonna
so.
keep it as is, and you're gonna, don't think you'll have that discussion?
And generally speaking, when we do see these, ones that haven't been surveyed already,
Yeah.
we give a little bit of, understanding
Give it a
that
buffer.
the exact is still waited to be surveyed. In this case, the survey is already done, so as long as you don't redo the survey. If you're redoing the survey, we will take it as, well, there's a little bit of wiggle room there. I wouldn't want to go over 12, but
Okay, yeah.
we administratively would provide and allow a little bit of change because it's usually a concept.
Okay,
Move, seconded, and discussion's done, so
Dan Vick, aye.
Paul, aye.
John, aye.
Cheryl and I.
Dan Mall, aye.
Good to go.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Yep.
Thank you, Charlotte.
virtual meeting, but since the applicant's not here, we will allow you to give comment in the meeting. So I did invite the neighbor in, so. Okay, Sandy, your request is up, and so, we do have, Sandy Loger on the phone. The request is for, let me get to it, a 17.5 acre entitlement division out of a 37.5 acre parcel using County Road 37 as the dividing line. Just a second here, there we go. The proposed 17.5 acre parcel includes approximately 6.9 acres of tillable land that's considered prime. The applicant does own 40 acres to the north with a structure on it, and the intent is, at least at this point, to include that and kind of combine that with that 40. Although, as an entitlement division, they can leave that remaining 33 acres as a separate restricted parcel. I do also have Deb Euchre, who was with Albion Township, the clerk, on the line. We did receive the township's approval of this request. She's just joining in case the board has any questions for the township. So I don't have anything more to add. Sandy, do you have anything more to add?
No, I'm having a real hard time hearing you.
Okay, you didn't have anything more to add? I just explained that you're looking for that 17.5 acres south of the highway.
Yes, correct.
Okay. We do have one neighbor. If you have any comments at this point, just come up to the podium. Give your name to Terry, please.
Bob Newman, 9468. I don't really have a comment, I have a question. My son and I operate a feedlot right here.
Yep.
And we were wondering if this division would have any effect on us in the future for expansion.
Okay.
that feedlot.
How many animals?
We're permitted now for about 175. My son would like to add an additional 250 in about a year or so.
I think it's above 499, it then becomes, I think, 1,000-foot setback, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm not sure, I'd have to ask Tracy.
I believe you're correct.
Yeah, it's, once you
Anything
get
over-
into the
once you hit
MPCA,
500 Once you
then
hit
it's,
500, it's 1,000 feet.
it's a
setback.
conditional use permit and it's 1,000-foot setback, so, I gotta get to the right.
As existing as 500? From a feedlot?
So 1,000 feet would be about to the middle this way. That's 1,000 feet. That is a natural environment lake, and so it's a 200-foot lakeshore setback for the house. So you put those two rings on here, and it would be fairly close. No, it'd be about 85 feet to build in. And the thing would be is feedlot setbacks are reciprocal. And so if this gets approved, if they wanted to go to more than 500 or more animal units, then the farm would need a variance to expand beyond the 500 or the 499. So there again, it all depends. Maybe, maybe not. If you don't go beyond 499, then it would have little impact because it's a 500-foot setback, which that's right here, and that applies now. And so they can't build a house in that portion of the lot anyway, not without coming before this board. So they're limited to that middle portion of the property.
Hey, Paul, are you up? Dan?
Yep. Well, me looking at it, I look at the natural boundary of the highway there. That's interesting with the setbacks, but I think that won't matter much in there, so I guess I'd be okay with what's proposed.
Paul?
I have, thank you for stopping in, because you really changed my mind here quite a bit. You know, one of our primary goals, or the long-range plan, is preserving farmland. And that also means, you know, looking out for the farmer. And I'm really seeing this with the setbacks, and if he did want to expand to more than 500, I think it is, that it would limit his ability to do so in the future. And I don't think that's fair for, you know, the current farm that's already there, and it's part of our long-range plan and preserving farmland and farming. I'm seeing very limited places to build a home on the proposed division with the setbacks in place, and so I really, you know, don't feel comfortable with the proposal. I would rather see that the entitlements be put across the street, would give more distance, and it would give a better buffer for the farmer as well, should he want to expand. So those are my thoughts.
Charlotte?
Yeah. Barry, I couldn't really keep track of what was going on with the setbacks for the possible expansion of the feedlot because the YouTube is delayed by a few minutes.
Okay.
So could you sort of walk me through verbally what the issues are? I understand is it 500 feet for an extra 500 head?
No, once you get above 499, it's 1,000 feet, and it requires a conditional use permit.
Okay, and where is the neighbor's feedlot? Is it south of the road?
Yes.
Okay, is that surrounding area south of the road?
It is, yes. Yes, it's
So
the,
I see the little buildings over on the right.
yes.
And about where in the proposed entitlement division would 1,000 feet
halfway.
The middle, it'd be basically the middle of this lot. And so if you see there's,
It would be possible,
well, it
it would
gets,
be possible to build a residence that meets the setback.
It would be-
Typical setback.
it would be possible, the most likely building site is kind of in the middle of the lot. So it gets a little bit, it would potentially have an impact. Now, here's another thing, you know, when we look at future potential, what can or can be done. So we'll throw this up. So without a variance, the applicant can do that, which would effectively limit his ability to do anything. They wouldn't have to come to the board. We administratively approve that tomorrow, which would have the same impact that this variance would have. So is that a potential? Yes. If the board would say, well, we're not going to grant the variance, the property owner can come in and do that tomorrow, and it's going to have the same impact. And so there again, I'm not trying to sway the board, but, you know, this is becoming part of the discussion simply because we're in front of the board. And so if they had proposed a 2.5 acre division in the middle of that, roughly where the likely buildable spot would be, it would have an impact regardless. So there again, not trying to say you should or shouldn't do it, but that is a fact. They could still do a division here that could impact his feedlot.
Could I jump back in for 1 second? Because there was one thing that all this discussion brought up. Where's their access point to this property on the other side? From the highway, is that curvature causing anything? Is that gonna push it over his way, or? I was thinking they're gonna build more by the lake myself. Center.
Well, I do believe there's an existing field approach right in the middle. Yeah.
I'll push them to the
Is
center.
that right, Bob?
There's two, actually.
It looks like there's one on your line and then one right in the middle.
Actually, no, I think there's two on her property, actually.
Okay. Oh, yeah, there's
Okay, that's-
one on the far west, one in the middle, and it looks like maybe a shared one, and that's probably real close to the property line, so yeah, there's actually,
No, I would think that the property line actually would be even further east.
oh,
If you go further east with your map there, I think
Yep.
you will see.
oh, yeah, because this is the 500 feet.
Correct.
Ah, yeah, that's not the property line's actually over
I
here.
think the blue line
Yeah.
would be the edge of her property.
So I don't know if that's actually an approach or not, but it kind of looked like it, because it definitely,
It is.
oh, it is, so they got 3 approaches there that
Correct.
could potentially be used. Sorry, I didn't recognize it, the mask just kind of threw me off. Talked to you enough, I should have told you. So, that's where we're at. And so those usually, you know, in a case like this, they would propose a change of use to the highway department. And the highway department, I mean, there's 3 of them to use here. The highway department may certainly have a preference on which one gets used, but in situations like this, with 17 acres, they can always do you know, more like a frontage driveway that comes in one, kind of goes parallel to the road and then comes back around to a house. Or, you know, we see, you know, all types of scenarios for driveways, but there is 3 existing approaches. Especially if they're gonna close off 1 or 2 of them, generally the highway department is willing to let them choose which one they want if they're gonna close the other 2. It's just fewer access points.
Can you put preliminary restrictions on it from the 1,000 feet? Okayed with the understanding that he may go 1,000 and try to get him to build in a certain area?
You know, I can't. Council, did you hear that? Greg, did you hear that?
Not very well.
Okay, so the question is Board Member Vic asked, could you put restrictions that they can't build within that 1,000 feet from the existing feedlot?
Can you put a restriction, I'm going to repeat what I think I heard. Can you put a restriction that they can't build within 1,000 feet of that lot?
Of the feedlot, next door.
Of the feedlot?
Yeah.
It'd be a reasonable condition of the development, wouldn't it? Right? So what you have up is what they want to build in, right? That box?
No, that's not. That is just an example that I gave the board. You know, we have a neighbor that's indicated they're looking at expanding their feedlot, and would would granting the variance have any impact on his feedlot? And the response was, only if they go beyond 499 animal units. Once you do that, then it's a 1,000-foot setback, is my understanding, from the feedlot to a neighboring residence. And so I drew a line, and the 1,000 feet is about in the middle of this lot, roughly about where you would want to probably build. And so, I drew the red box as an example of, without the variance, they could come in and apply for this tomorrow and it's going to have the same impact. It means that the feedlot would then have to get a variance to expand over 500 animal units, and it wouldn't even require the board's review.
Yeah, well, and then maybe the feedlot has to get a variance if they do build there. It really comes up to the board, I guess. How do you want to proceed here? You could make it a condition. I think it'd be reasonable.
I think.
Or we could also say that the feedlot owner, if they want to expand, has to come in for a variance at that point in time.
So it's one of those that, it's a reasonable condition, but there's more than one ways to skin a cat.
I just want to apologize to the rest of the board for butting in, but those popped in my head.
Okay, Paul?
No,
Oh, sure.
It's a good question. I just wish I could hear everybody better. Sure, Charlotte's in the same boat as me.
Yep.
Did that answer your question, Charlotte?
Actually, it was Dan Vick's question.
Oh, Dan's question? Okay.
I think what we have to figure out sort of is which comes first, the chicken or the egg. Right now, whoever buys the property to build a house within 500 feet of the feedlot, because that has a certain number of animal units for which that's expected. And we have no idea whether they'll increase the number of animal units they have or not. And so, should we be putting that restriction on somebody with a bird in the hand? But we could be prophylactic and say, no, we don't want to have any problems, and put a restriction of 1,000-foot setback, so the feedlot owner can expand or not, and without a variance. So we have to juggle that, and I'm not sure where I fall out. I'd be interested to hear from Dan Mall.
I was just going to say the same thing.
I do have one question, and both you and to Dan. What is the likelihood that you would expand your operation to over 500? Is that like a whole new level? I don't know anything about farming, but is that something that is highly unlikely or something that very well could happen? So just kind of factor that in.
And my question is, Bob, is it this site he's looking at expanding?
He is in the process of buying my mother's or his grandmother's property on a contract for deed, and that's in the works right now, and so he's thinking that come spring, he would like to expand, like I said, about 250. And he is my partner. I am not certain at this time that we would go over the 500 mark at that location. We have other locations that we cattle as well. But that's that. He's 30 years old. He's a young man. He may have bigger dreams than I.
I think we're talking about a feedlot, and absolutely we need to protect that. But I'm looking at what we've done in the past here with preserving prime tillable land. Not much has been said about that, and I know each one of us board members at different times agreed or have disagreed. But one thing that we've always done is preserved prime tillable land. And, I think you've talked a lot about the feedlot and the expansion, and is it likely? That's hard to say. We talk hypotheticals and that kind of thing, but like the public pointed out, he's a young man, you don't know. We need to protect that, but also we always protect prime tillable land. And if they come in and want to do a 2.5 acre split, we can't stop it, okay? I mean, that's there. But we can say, we want to preserve prime tillable land. And if you look at the county there, I mean, he's got it up on there, the sections of land. It's all, you're in farm country. I mean,
There is a specific reason why I pulled it to here.
and I was gonna come to, I mean, I know the area, I know it's in Albion Township. You start getting into the southern part of the county, you're no longer in the Delano area, you're no longer in the Monticello area where it's highly residential, or the Albertville area where it's farmland amongst houses and, you know, land is being sold. This portion of the county in Albion Township, it's rural. It really is rural, and it is farmland, you know, a lot of fields. Yeah, we've been splitting things up around lakes and around that, but we really haven't been breaking up and allowing things in ag land.
The one thing I will say is, this parcel right here was before the board, I think 2 years ago. And the board did a 15 acre over the 2.5 and a 25 restricted. So approved the separation using the highway with roughly the same numbers that we're looking at here. Just, the board's aware, we are really strict on those, but we have.
Oh, and that's what I'm saying, we have done it. I mean, I've gone against certain things that, you know, other portions of the board have, and we have done it. We did one, can't remember the farm just recently in last year, where they wanted to build a house across the road from the dairy farm. And you know, so I mean, it's been done, I'm not saying it hasn't, but something this board has always tried to do is preserve prime tillable land. And now, besides preserving prime tillable land, you also have a livestock farm nearby. And it is active now, there's cattle there, you know, we split it off, we can't tell them exactly where to put their house, they gotta be in the setbacks. But again, we've talked about putting houses in the middle of a field, and that's what this is, it's a 17 acre field. There's no trees on it, there's a wetlands in it. Those are my reservations and my challenges of sitting on this board.
When I looked at this, I thought I visually looked at you want to get close to the lake, so I was okay with it. I just thought that right away, but then when you start talking in the center of the property, I have the reserve of the prime tillable too in my mind. But that's why I wouldn't be opposed to that 1,000 foot. If we can do that and that's reasonable, that would push them that way more. No buildings within 1,000 feet of it. I think it'd get them closer to that lake and preserve the tillable that way. I would be happy to put that restriction on.
Can I ask a question? Thank you, Dan. To the other Dan, of these farmable pieces, the one across the road is probably the smallest and least farmable. I mean, could that be they got the entitlement, you know? Mm-hmm. And you're right, the prime tillable problem in between the prime tillable and the location to the feedlot, I don't feel comfortable with the proposal, but I'm thinking across the street is an alternative. That's smaller. Is it?
Are you saying on the north side of the road?
The north side, yeah. How many acres is that? Because you have that creek going through, so it's less conducive to some of the larger equipment. And kind of where I'm thinking. You know?
Yeah, and I'm just looking at what's proposed here.
Okay, all right.
Wherever they want to go, or if they, you know, if it gets denied, they can look at it again or change things up, whatever.
Point taken, I get it.
As far as what's being asked for here today is what my thought is.
Okay,
A motion?
motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the request of the variance 155.026 and 155.048 G 4C, Chapter 155, Title 15, Land Usage and Zoning, Wright County Ordinance to allow 37.5 acre parcel to be split by the county road. The part of the property line south of County Road 37 that is approximately 17.5 acres and includes 6.9 acres of tillable land is to be separated with a residential building entitlement, with the balance of the tax parcel to be owned with the applicant's 40 acres in Section 9. With the restriction of staying 1,000 feet from the farm, ag, or what is it called again?
Feedlot.
Feedlot, yep. Yeah.
And here, We have a motion on the table. We need to,
Can I change that to any buildable buildings, any buildings within, because that'll push it further to the.
the setback is only to the residence. It's not to an accessory building.
Oh, okay. I wanted to save prime.
So we have a motion on the table. We should really have a second, and then we do need discussion.
Here a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay, and so as for discussion, we have not asked the applicant her thoughts on any of the discussion and whether or not she, with our current environment, whether she even heard it. So Sandy, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, have you been hearing what the board has been talking about?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
It's gonna say farmland.
Okay, so the one thing that the board's motion includes is a condition that any house has to be 1,000 feet from the neighboring feedlot to the east, which pushes it to the west side of the middle of the property. And so looking at, where lake setbacks and everything fall, it's a much tighter building site. And so I wasn't sure if you were aware of the discussion that was being had, and kind of where the motion lies right at this moment.
Yes, I'm listening, yeah.
Okay. And so now from a staff's portion on the discussion, I understand, the desire to potentially protect a feedlot operation that may increase in the future. However, with that being said, we're placing a restriction on something that right now doesn't exist. And so we're saying, well, you cannot build closer than this distance to something that may at some point happen or may not at some point. And it's a fairly restrictive condition when you look at the layout of the property. Now, there's no saying that the board is approving the motion as presented, but that is my concern, is that we're placing a condition for something that, who knows what the future could hold. And so from a staff perspective, it's not like we're looking at the 500 feet. We're doubling that. And so that is, from a staff perspective, that is concern. Now, is it a condition you can place? Certainly is. I'm not saying you can't. I'm not even suggesting that you don't. But be sure of it, because it is a very restrictive condition for this piece of property if it gets approved. I understand Mr. Newman's concerns about, how it impacts his feedlot and the ability to expand. In this case, it would mean, well, if him or his son or somebody in the future wanted to expand this, they may then have to look at, sliding any new buildings or anything they want to do over, or applying for the same variance in return. We did just grant a variance for a new house on an existing lot, or a new house on a lot that doesn't have a house on it, at roughly 250 feet, and that was from a dairy. And so, to me, we're placing a very restrictive condition on something that may or may not happen. At 170 head now, it's a 500-foot setback. So you're looking at, more than doubling that, and even more so, even if you expand by 250, that gets you to 420. You're still under the 500. You're still able to have the house there and do everything you need there. So there again, it's just a concern that if it never happens, we've made a severe restriction on this ability to build. Again, it's one of those things that if you're going to place that on it, then don't grant the variance at all, then kind of type of thing. That's kind of what's in my head. Well, if you want to be that restrictive, then just don't grant it here, because you're eliminating a half of the property to build on, and it's 17 acres.
I was making that motion twofold. It wasn't just to protect the farmland, but it was to protect the green tillable too.
Mm-hmm.
By putting them over on that side is what my intentions are, to reserve more tillable.
But the problem is with this, once you go to that 17 acres, if I buy the 17 acres, I'm not gonna farm it, I'm gonna plant wildflowers in it and let the pheasants grow. And so just by making the division, you're effectively removing, and we've had this discussion before, you're effectively removing it. You have to look at it as if you're removing it from farm production.
You remove this, it doesn't say that they can't put in a horse arena or whatever.
Right.
You're eliminating, you could create 17 and a half acres, you can create a pretty nice empire, you know? And even with the 500-foot setback with the residents, the property is still conducive to, it's still agricultural. It's not an R1 like we've had discussions today, or shoreland. It's still ag, and it can still become another residence, you know.
But it is 6.9 acres of prime.
Right.
Yep.
And they can come in with the 2.5, and that's what the ordinance is for. It's an agricultural land, come in with the 2.5, you're still leaving 14 and a half acres. You gotta meet your setbacks from the swamp or whatever that is there. You know, I mean, all of that's conducive. The ordinance gives us 2.5 acres, and they can do it. They can come in tomorrow, as Barry pointed out, and put it wherever they want. Wisely, they should put it in a certain area, but that's up to them, and they can do that. It's in our ordinance to do a 2.5 acre if they want to sell a building entitlement, they want to capitalize on it, and then it still maintains our agricultural land. That's where I'm at. I mean, if they want to build a house out there, they can split off, they have the entitlement, we all have those on our properties, it's our right.
I think you're not looking at that natural division though of the highway. You take 2.5 tillable out of there and maybe 4 or 5 acres of the rest. I see that as prime tillable over there. Probably rent that out or let them use that and build it right where it's got this white sticker and there's still room there. So I'm looking at the natural division. I think it doesn't make sense to pull equipment across there for 6 acres of tillable with the highway, and then if you take 2.5 out for a property, so that's
fine.
Yeah,
I mean,
but I don't want to use
I
up
know where
prime
you're coming.
tillable.
Yeah, no.
I don't either. So, but
Fine.
okay. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, will you, Paul?
I think we have a motion.
We have a motion and a second, so it's, you either rescind the motion or you call the vote.
Okay, call the vote.
Dan Vick, aye.
Paul,
Did we get a reaction from Sandy?
Yes, yes, Sandy has heard the discussion and is aware of the motion that's on the table.
Okay, thank you.
Charlotte, you're up.
So what was, we,
no.
I'll vote aye.
Dan Mall, no.
Up to John.
I'm the chairman.
I will vote no.
So the motion that was on the table to approve the division as presented with a 1,000-foot setback from the neighboring feedlot failed. And so unless, council, get me wrong, unless there's another motion made of some other type, it's a de facto denial.
Yeah, at this point in time, it did not get approved, so if there isn't another motion that can pass, then we gotta figure out how to deal with this variance and possibly move for denial then.
So Sandy, okay, did you hear the discussion with the board? The motion that was made to approve your request did not pass. And so is there any other way you would want to consider doing a division here?
Well, it's gonna stay farmland.
I understand that, but they did not approve the division at this point using the highway as the dividing line. And so your options are to withdraw the request, in which case no action was made and you would have to look at another way to do the division, or you could request to continue it and think of a new way to do it. And that way, if that thought or that division has or needs variances, we still have an open hearing and you don't need to reapply.
Okay, yeah, with 1,000 feet from the feedlot, but there's no feedlot yet.
Well, that motion did not pass. And so as of right.
Was 1,000 feet?
Correct. And so as of right now, your variance request is in essence denied, and you need to, the board either needs to make another motion, which at this point, I don't know if the board is ready to, or you could continue and you can look at maybe different ways to do the division. I can give you a call. We could talk about different ways to do the division, and then you could represent that in November.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay, so I think at this point, we should continue it. Give me a chance to talk to the applicant and maybe be able to explain it a little bit better to her and what her options are. And then either she'll come back with something or, see where it progresses.
I'll make a motion to continue it to the next meeting.
Okay,
I'll second it.
been moved and
I'll
seconded.
second that.
Okay. Dan Vick, aye.
Paul, aye.
John, I.
Carol and I.
Dan Mall, aye.
Okay, Sandy, I'll give you a call when I get out of the meeting.
Okay.
Thanks,
Okay,
Sandy.
thank you.
Thank you. Go home and tell my wife I'm not doing any cleaning. I did all my cleaning today already.
There you go.
Okay, give your names to Terry, please.
Bruce Moffett, applicant.
Over there.
Bruce Moffett, applicant.
Isabel Olson, former owner.
Okay, yes, Mr. Chairman, what we're dealing with is a requested lot line adjustment to add a portion of a restricted lot that the board had allowed previously in 2015 to remain attached to a lakeshore lot. This particular request is to basically readjust that line to, as you can see here, the red. And so right now, this lot is required to stay along with the lakeshore lot up in the far right, upper right corner, and then draw a new line here attaching the riding arena and the 8.7 acres to the neighboring Markham property, with the rest still being attached to the lakeshore lot. The only thing of note is the riding arena itself. The riding arena, since it doesn't meet the 300-foot lakeshore setback for animals, it's allowed as a riding arena only. It's not allowed stalls. And I had one other piece here. The feedlot officer is indicating that it's the combined properties would be limited to 9.9 animal units. So we did receive.
Repeat that?
The combined properties, if approved, would be limited to 9.99 animal units.
Okay.
And the township has approved the proposed adjustment. So that's all I got. So do you guys have anything more to add?
The challenge with the property is that the accessibility is really difficult. So if you look at the map where the main dwelling is, you come down through wetlands, and it's hard to service that land. So inevitably what I have to do is I've got to go the opposite direction on Etna, come around the entire lake to access the driveway to the property that I'm suggesting that we adjust the land. And it means that I have to maintain 2 driveways. I have to almost really maintain farm equipment in both locations. I mean, just to get it down there would be trailering, and so it just really is kind of an impossible situation, which is the opposite is true with the buyer, because they've got a use for a riding arena. They're familiar and have been advised as to what Barry is saying, that it is a riding arena only, that it is not to have stalls. They've got stalls on their existing property, and so it's a good land use, and it relieves me of trying to service property that is just really awkward.
Okay, where are we at?
Just as a note, we do not have anybody on the WebEx call, so.
Okay,
Good to go.
I'll go.
okay.
Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with it. I think your hardship issue on as far as accessibility is noted, and it seems to be beneficiary for both parties, so I'm in favor of it.
Okay,
And it also looks like the way the property line is in the riding arena, was there a variance on that, or is that within the setbacks?
Within the setback.
It's within the setbacks?
Yeah, since there's no animals housed in it, it was 30 feet.
Okay, but even from the property line setback, I mean, it looks like it's right on that property line.
Yeah, it's deceiving, but yeah,
Okay.
it's 30 feet.
And then the other thing is, and it was recommended by planning and zoning, is that the division, the lot line adjustment is consistent with the creek that comes, that goes right into the wetland. So it is divided by a natural division.
Yeah, no, looking at it and what they're trying to accomplish, I don't have a problem with it. I think it makes sense to what they're trying to accomplish.
Ken?
I'm okay with it.
Okay. Charlotte?
I'm okay with it.
Okay, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the lot line adjustment as regulated in section 155.026E2 and 155.048, chapter 155, title 15, land usage and zoning of Wright County Code of Ordinance, to follow the natural boundary, creek, and wetland, and add an approximately 8.7 acres to include the personal riding area / storage building from the Moffett property, formerly owned by Olson. Property ID 213-100-181100 to the Markham property ID 213-100-182401, remaining 5.1 acres to be remained owned in common with the Moffett platted residential lot number 213-135-001130.
Second that motion.
Been moved and seconded, question?
A couple of things. Terry, would we need to redo the administrative order for the Lakeshore lot because of the change in the legal? Okay, and so this should be conditioned on administrative orders for the Lakeshore portion to remain owned by Moffett.
Okay.
And also either a parcel combine or administrative order for the portion picked up by Markham with a survey. And also just reinstating the condition that the riding arena is for riding arena only and may not include stalls or housing of animals, and that the Markham's combined property is limited to 9.99 animal units.
So noted.
Second.
All right,
Yep.
call the vote.
Moved and seconded, do I hear?
Dan Vick, aye.
All aye.
John, aye.
Charlotte, aye.
Dan Law, aye.
All right. Okay, so just get surveys done.
Yep.
Get that survey formalized and have parcel A and parcel B, and then our staff will do orders. Markham will have to sign one and you'll have to sign.
Okay, great. Good. Thank you all very much. Enjoy your weekend.
Mr. Chairman, we do have one more item of business. We do need to set a site inspection.
What are we doing?
Site inspection.
Oh, site inspection, yes.
I know, what I can tell the board is I am gone a lot in the next month, so if you want me there, which I prefer to be there,
Yeah.
What's the next Friday like?
What's good for you? Start with that.
next Friday I won't be here.
Okay.
The only Friday I'll be here is the 16th, and I almost am required to remain in the office as we're extremely short-staffed that day. And it's a board cutoff, so I prefer to usually be in the office for cutoffs.
Tuesday I can't do.
I'm good for Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays for the most part. I am taking two Mondays off in the next 3 weeks and 2 Fridays off in the next 3 weeks. So I'm taking some long weekends.
Later.
Are we good on Tuesdays?
I can't do Tuesday.
Oh.
7th would work for me.
October 7th? Wednesday the 7th?
What you guys? I got a dentist appointment.
I'm done with harvest. Later in the month after that would be better, so the week of the 12th, 19th.
I can do the 12th, 19th.
Do we want to do the 14th, Wednesday the 14th?
Or Tuesday, the 13th.
Oh, I think I got.
I am available either the 13th or the 14th. I'm just not available the 12th.
Yeah.
Want to move
Or
it
the
into
16th.
3rd for that matter.
The 21st?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's make it October 21st.
Works for me.
What time?
Let's see, we can meet, hey, well, anyone coming from the north, if you just want to meet on the site, it's north of Buffalo, so we could either meet at the site or meet here at the building at 8:15.
Okay.
Probably come to the building at 8:15, it's easier.
Okay.
Okay, do I hear a motion to
I'll make a
adjourn?
motion to adjourn.
You guys make the easy motions. I'll second.
That's why I climb up on
Move
that
and
right
second.
away.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. What do we have?